Senate Committee Room, B 306. Did you know live Senate video is now available at youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia? Senate Committee Room, B 306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306. Did you know live Senate video is now available at youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia? Senate Committee Room, B 306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306. Did you know live Senate video is now available at youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia? Senate Committee Room, B 306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306. Did you know live Senate video is now available at youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia? Senate Committee Room, B 306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306. Did you know live Senate video is now available at youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia? Senate Committee Room, B 306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306. Did you know live Senate video is now available at youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia?
Jeremy. Good morning. Welcome to Senate Committee on Local Government. We're going to call the roll so we can get organized and get some proxies because different senators are going to be coming in and out throughout the day. So we're going to go ahead and open the roll, please.
You have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So if members have proxies, if we can go ahead and open up and get proxies set, we can get going this morning. So a couple of housekeeping items. I believe Senate Bill 1136 that's been requested to go by for the day. Senator Boysko, if I can get a motion.
So moved.
There's a motion and a second that Senate Bill 1136 go by for the week. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That bill is by for the day. Next up, of a bit of housekeeping, we also have Senate Bill 1087 from Senator Craig. The patron has requested that that bill be stricken. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
So motion and second to strike Senate Bill 1087. Clerk, please open the roll.
Ayes 14, noes 0.
And we also have Senate Bill 1114 regarding solar siting. There are several bills in Commerce and Labor, and the Chair of Commerce and Labor has requested that all those bills be heard in that committee. And so the motion would be to re-refer to Commerce and Labor. Is there a motion?
So moved.
There's a motion and a second. Clerk, please open the roll.
Ayes 13, noes 1.
Got it.
All right, that bill is re-referred. We have two new committee members. So now that we've done some opening business, so I would like our two new committee members to introduce themselves and where they're coming from, starting from my right.
I'm Luther Cyphers, District 10 Senator serving Amelia, Appomattox, Buckingham, Cumberland, Fluvanna, Goochland, parts of Hanover and Louisa, Powhatan, and parts of Prince Edward.
Great, welcome to the Committee on Local Government. And to my left, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Senator Srinivasan, representing Eastern Loudoun. Thank you.
All right, welcome. First up in our docket this morning, we have Senator Hashmi. You have Senate Bill 1178, and I'm also going to invite Senator Srinivasan to come down, and also you have a similar bill and present to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And if permitted, I would like Senator Srinivasan to present his bill first.
Great, and that's Senate Bill 1351.
Thank you, Senator Hashmi. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I have today Senate Bill 1351. This legislation aims to streamline the development of affordable housing on properties owned by faith organizations and other 501c3 tax-exempt nonprofit organizations. By reducing regulatory burdens and promoting higher density, it addresses the urgent housing needs across our Commonwealth. Many faith-based organizations and nonprofits have underutilized land and dedicated to affordable housing, providing much-needed stability for families and easing the impact of Virginia's housing crisis on our communities and constituents. In fact, faith organizations alone own more than 70,000 acres of land in Virginia. However, as we all know, rezoning processes are often lengthy, costly, and unpredictable, deterring many organizations from pursuing these projects. This bill seeks to require localities to allow eligible properties to build affordable housing with clear and objective criteria, streamlining the process while keeping necessary protections in place. This legislation represents a win-win. It helps alleviate our housing shortage while empowering communities of faith and nonprofits to fulfill their mission statement. Thank you for your consideration, and I hope you can support this bill. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Senator. Now, the motion would be, it's my understanding that you would like to roll your bill into Senator Hashmi's bill and be listed as chief co-patron. Is that correct? Okay. All right. There's a motion and a second to incorporate 1351. Clerk, please open the roll.
You need to vote. You can vote.
Ayes 14, noes 0.
All right, that is incorporated. Senator Hashmi, we now have an incorporated bill into your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. So as you heard, this is an area that several of our legislators in both the House as well as in the Senate and many of our advocacy groups and various organizations have been working on. This is an effort to address the critical crisis that we have in housing shortage as well as in specifically in shortage of affordable housing. And as all of us, I think, would acknowledge, housing is not just a commodity, but it is a basic human right, and that we have a fundamental responsibility, a collective responsibility, to ensure that all families, no matter their income or their background, have a place to call home. And for too long, we've seen many of our faith-based organizations and houses of worship sit on vacant properties and properties that can be repurposed to address our housing crisis. And this legislation seeks to empower to do that. So, Mr. Chair, we have a substitute that we'd like to introduce based on some of the ongoing conversations that we've been having, and if I could present the substitute to the committee.
Is there a motion on the substitute? There's a motion and a second to adopt the substitute. All in favor, say aye. 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 The substitute is before us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the bill is really very specifically focused. It's granting authority to our localities to adopt a variety of strategies that are intended to encourage and facilitate the development of affordable housing on property that's owned by either religious organizations or by tax-exempt nonprofit organizations. And it allows our localities to request administrative support from the Department of Housing and Community Development in preparation for a faith and housing ordinance. And you'll see in the substitute that we have clarified much of the language that would allow the localities, as they are developing their comprehensive plans, to incorporate and also include community input into their work to develop the comprehensive plan, to propose strategies that support affordable housing development by religious or by property tax exempt nonprofit organizations. This legislation spells out the ways in which the local localities would be able to provide that support, specifically to create a process for religious organizations or tax-exempt nonprofits to develop affordable housing on their real property, to create a zoning overlay district, to establish application incentives, to provide a review by the Planning Commission, and to establish clear guidelines that would allow such efforts to go forward. And that's the essence of the bill. It is to permit our localities the opportunity to incorporate into their comprehensive plan how to move forward with establishing affordable housing through property that's owned by religious organizations or by tax-exempt organizations.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Rum, you have a question.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A question for the patron. So I would ask the patron in the first section of the bill, where it says beginning July 1st, 2025, a locality shall, that is the only requirement imposed to localities, and everything after that is permissive of the localities unless, let's say, so that part is basically saying you're supposed to include this in your comprehensive plan the next time that you have an update with it. And then after that, it becomes permissive for localities. It says, if you want to adopt an ordinance, then you shall do these three things. Is that correct? Is that a proper understanding of the bill?
Mr. Chair and Senator Rome, that's exactly correct.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Senator. So we'll take those in support of Senate Bill 1178. Please come forward. We're going to have, depending on how many, if you can come up and show your support. If there's anything new to add to the committee's knowledge base that the patron did not say, you can share that. And we'll go through and limit to 5 minutes, but encourage, we have a lot of other items on the docket today, so good morning.
Good morning. Sheila Hurley-Hennessy with the Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy. The patron did a phenomenal job summarizing the bill, and we are very grateful to both her and Senator Srinivasan for bringing this issue forward. Faith communities around Virginia are indeed in crisis and want to be able to support their communities. I dropped off at all of your offices this past week a copy of this book on congregations building affordable housing around Virginia, which goes into far more depth than I will in the next 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Happy to answer any questions, but would appreciate your support of this bill to allow localities to make it easier for congregations to build affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Ben Campbell. I'm working with Virginia Episcopal Real Estate Partners. The Episcopal Diocese of Virginia has 179 churches between the James and the Potomac River. And we have begun to engage in a significant process of working with churches that have a congregation too small for their facility and have land available that could be used for affordable housing. If we talk about affordable housing, I did run a nonprofit in housing for about 4 years. If we talk about affordable housing, anything you can do to make it more affordable is critical. So facilitating the process, cutting down the number of lawyers we have to hire and the way we go through things, and makes an enormous difference as we try to lower the cost, which then gets passed on to the people. And we have motivated people wanting to do this.
Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Tony Miller, and I am a parishioner at St. Elizabeth's Catholic Church here in the city of Richmond. We have a booming immigrant community, and this applies to us because we've donated our land that was formerly the school to be able to facilitate housing, affordable housing for these folks and other folks like them. This bill would be a wonderful way to help localities make the process go a lot quicker, so we're very in support of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Sarah Graham Taylor on behalf of the City of Alexandria. We support the bill. We have done projects like this in our city. We have been very successful. We appreciate this bill will open us up for other localities to do work as the City of Alexandria has done. Thank you.
Morning, morning, Mr. Chair. Scott Pedowitz with the Apartment and Office Building Association. Also support the bill as a way to work with willing partners to increase our housing supply. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Ryan O'Toole of Freedom, Virginia. We support the bill to address the state's housing crisis. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman. Laura Dodds with Housing Opportunities Made Equal. We support the bill, as does the Virginia Coalition for Immigrant Rights. Thank you.
Good morning, Honorable Chair and fellow senators. My name is Eli Weinger with Students for Equity and Reform in Virginia. We're here in support of the bill. Thank you.
Good morning, Trip Pollard with the Southern Environmental Law Center. This bill does a great job of balancing sometimes competing public interests between the provision of affordable housing, protecting local authority, and we thank the Senator especially for working with us on this latest round of changes, and we support the bill.
Noah Ackerman. I'm a seminarian at Virginia Theological Seminary in Alexandria. The current zoning process is prohibitively expensive and lengthy and ultimately too unpredictable for most of our congregations. In the group that I am representing today, Voice, Virginians Organized for Interfaith Community Engagement, so we are here supporting the stronger language of Srinivasan's original bill.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Kashish Pillay with New Virginia Majority, and we support this bill to address the housing crisis. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman, Senators. I'm Gustavo Espinosa with the Legal Aid Justice Center. We support long-term supply solutions that make housing affordable to low-income Virginians. These solutions are helpful when coupled with stronger protections that keep folks in their homes in the short term. We support this bill. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Stuart Schwartz. I'm the Executive Director of the Coalition for Smarter Growth, working in the D.C. region, including Northern Virginia. We've worked with a number of faith institutions and nonprofit affordable housing developers on some terrific projects in Alexandria, Arlington, and Fairfax, in locations close to transit, jobs, and walkable neighborhoods. So we think it's a great idea to provide this opportunity, enabling powers and flexibility to local governments to increase the supply of affordable housing through this method. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, I'm Will Wilson with RVA YIMBY and the Commonwealth Housing Coalition. We support the stronger language formerly carried by Senator Srinivasan. In a housing crisis, telling localities shall is not enough. Let those who serve God and their missions take priority over the insecurities of zoning administrators. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Two
Barrett
more
Harden,
speakers.
Commonwealth Housing Coalition. We also supported the stronger language of Senator Srinivasan's bill, but appreciate Senator Hashmi and this first step towards making housing for faith organizations easier.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, Michelle Gowdy, VML. We support the bill.
Mr. Chairman, a question, Ms. Gowdy. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Gowdy, love what you do, of course, but does it concern the municipalities that rather than permissively, this says in line 13 that the towns and cities shall do this, shall develop a plan which incorporates this? I mean, that's not a bother to you all?
For the comprehensive plan piece?
Yes.
No, that was a negotiated piece with the senator and with the interfaith people, and we all worked in very good faith to get that comprehensive plan language in there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We have three speakers online. I will allow extension. Priority is given to those in the room for testimony, so we're beyond our time limit. So if you want to raise your hand and simply state your name for support, we'd appreciate it so we can move through it. We also need to take opposition.
Cindy Messer, please unmute and begin your testimony.
Good morning, Cindy Mester, City of Falls Church, Legislative Affairs Director, and on behalf of City Council, we appreciate the work that's gone through to roll Senate Bill 1351 into Senate Bill 1178, and we're supportive of the substitute. We all agree on the need and the criticality of affordable housing, and this presents a nice balance.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Next speaker.
Janelle Watson, please turn on your camera, unmute, and begin your testimony.
Hi, my name is Janelle Watson. I'm a pastor with the Virginia Conference of the United Methodist Church and Executive Director of Embrace Centers for Community Incorporated, with a site at Embrace Waynesboro in Waynesboro, Virginia. We have approximately four.
Thank you. You're in support of the bill? I'm sorry to be short. We've gone over our time for support, so I just want to be respectful of those who may want to speak against it as well. Thank you for joining us this morning. And the last speaker online.
Steve Stanley, please turn on your camera, unmute, and begin your testimony.
Good morning. My name is Steve Stanley. I'm speaking in support of these two bills, 1178 and 1351. I'm currently the Vestry Council President at Holy Apostles Church in Virginia Beach, and we have experienced selling a piece of our property and having a building for young girls who have been human trafficked. That building is in support of those young girls.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Those in opposition to Senate Bill 1178, please come forward. Senator, you seem to have done a pretty good job at clearing out the room of any opposition, so well done for a Monday morning, or they just haven't had their coffee and made it in quite yet, so well done. So the questions of the patron from the committee, if there is a motion, it'll have to be re-referred to finance. I do have a letter from the chair.
Mr. Chair, I have a motion.
Senator Rome.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to report as amended and refer to finance.
All right, there's a motion and a second to report and re-refer Senate Bill 1178. Clerk, open the roll.
Ayes 12, noes 3.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
That bill reports. Thank you. All right, my queue has cleared. Senator Reeves, and followed by Salim.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have Senate Bill 1422.
Okay, committee, turn your attention to Senate Bill 1422.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a by-request bill from Fauquier County. They've been dealing with a trash disposal issue, and I have Supervisor Zabradas and their county attorney, Tracy Goulaire, here to speak a little bit about it. But basically, the bill is intended to support localities in the enforcement of zoning violations when dealing with non-agricultural fill waste debris imported to agriculturally and residentially zoned properties. What's happening is some of these construction sites, whether it be a data center or just commercial construction sites, are paying individuals to fill their pickups and take them out to the property out in the country and just dump their stuff. And so it's a real big problem in Fauquier. It's probably loud, and I would assume some of the other areas are dealing with the same thing. But Mr. Chairman, if you would indulge me and allow my supervisor and the county attorney to speak to the issue, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. Thank you, Senator. Please come up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members, and thank you, Senator Reeves. My name is Ike Broadus. I'm supervisor for the Scott District of Fauquier County, which is the northeastern part of the county. This is a problem that has existed for a long time, but it has really accelerated in the last several years with the increase in demand for data center development and highway development. What's occurring is the developers, the folks that are doing the building, are, whether it's milling asphalt or grading, and especially for the data centers where they're trying to do large swaths of perfectly level ground, they'll have an enormous amount of fill dirt that they need to dispose of. And the fill dirt is being essentially sold, or they're paying farmers to allow the developers to bring the fill dirt out. And we've had cases where literally 100 dump trucks a day will show up on our country roads and will go to a farm that has no permitting. They won't take care of any soil and erosion control. They will pile dirt up on a farm field, maybe 20 or 30 or 40 feet. We've had cases where they did it underneath power lines and got so high that when the dump truck came to dump the next load, they bumped into the power line and had an electrocution last year, in fact. They're not taking care to protect streams. They're doing it right up against neighbors' boundaries. And the problem is that our enforcement capacity just is, it's not even enough to deter. because we have minimal fines and a long process. And as a result, it's just a cost of doing business for these folks. These farmers can earn up to $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 in a day by accepting these trucks, and the roads are getting destroyed. So we appreciate it. I'm here to answer any questions as well.
Thank you. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Thank you, Senator Reeves. I'm Tracy Galera. I'm the county attorney for Fauquier County. Been employed by Fauquier County for almost 30 years in handling zoning enforcement matters over the breadth of those decades as well. And can tell you this is by far the worst zoning struggle that our rural areas in Virginia have experienced during the tenure of my almost 3-decade-long career. As Supervisor Broadus mentioned, this is a business enterprise for a lot of these haulers, dumpers, and even some of the areas in the guise of agriculture that are receiving this fill dirt, waste, debris, other materials. What we are asking are 2 very small amendments to Virginia Code 15.2 2286 to put this violation on par with existing authority within that statute. 2 sections of that provision, we are seeking changes. One is to the appeal period. That appeal period is an initial administrative appeal to the BZA after a zoning administrator makes a determination. It's not a judicial appeal period. There is authority for shortening that normal 30-day BZA appeal period to 10 days within the code for parking of commercial vehicles and trucks within residential neighborhoods. By far, this is substantially more impactful over a very short period of time than just the parking of a commercial truck, and we would ask that this particular violation be held at least on par with that type of activity. The second amendment is to make the fines for misdemeanor convictions of a violation of a non-ag fill ordinance on par with the same authority today in 2286 and fine structure for too many unrelated individuals living in a single-family dwelling. This is far more impactful on our community, on our neighbors, on our rural areas than even too many residents living in the house or the apartment next door to you. I'd be happy to answer any other questions or elaborate further if members of the committee desire.
Thank you very much. Questions of the committee? Any other support for Senate Bill 1422? Anybody online? Okay. Any opposition to Senate Bill 1422? Please come forward. I'm sorry. Was there support? Okay. You want to come up and share your name and support?
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. Bob Weir, Gainesville District Supervisor, Prince William County. I support the bill, and we have a very similar, if not worse, problem in Prince William County with this. We have been spending an inordinate amount of time, resources to try and get a handle on this, and unfortunately, it's pushed our dirt into Fauquier County. I apologize.
Okay. Thank you very much. Good morning. Please come up.
Good morning, Rachel Ellis. I live in the Gainesville district, and I live in a community that this was impacting. The safety of the community, I reached out to Supervisor Weir's office, and we were able to get some solution, but it is impacting rural areas. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair McPike. I am Elena Schlossberg. I represent the Coalition to Protect Prince William County. We absolutely support this bill. It's not just the Gainesville area, it's districts throughout Prince William County and throughout Virginia. And I hope that you will pass this bill.
Thank you so much. Those in opposition to Senate Bill 1142?
Mr. Chair.
Senator Rome.
Move to report.
All right, there's a motion and a second to report Senate Bill 1422. Clerk, please open the roll.
Lack of sleep.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all.
Thank you. Yeah. Senator Salim, you've got a similar bill to
Correct.
Senator Stanley. This has been
Thank
Senate
you,
Bill
Mr.
932,
Chair.
I believe, that was through this committee and been referred back. This is a similar bill, but I'd encourage the language that came out of the Housing Commission be incorporated into yours. I'm going to turn over the chair to Senator Rome. I've got to go to present to Senate Finance, and so I'm going to provide my proxy also there, but I would encourage the senator to use the Housing Commission's language.
Yeah. Madam Chair, since Senator, there is a substitute that's in front of you as well.
Motion's been made and probably second to adopt the committee to move substitute. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. All those opposed? All right, substitute's properly before us. Senator, if you'd like to explain what it does.
Yep. Thank you, Madam Chair. So the substitute, what it does is it takes the Housing Commission's recommended bill that Senator Stanley's carrying, which is Senate Bill 1256. It does not incorporate the definition from that bill, but I'm willing to go ahead and make that amendment to incorporate that same definition
Senator,
as well.
if you'll hold on 1 second. Quick question for council or clerk. Is the substitute available online? It just came up now? Okay, great. Thank you so much. Please continue.
So if we do disagree on the definition itself, I would refer back to the Housing Commission's definition and adopt that as well. And of course, with all the other changes that we made in the last meeting regarding the parking issue, regarding the setback, and all that stays consistent with the current substitute as well. And all this substitute really does is just incorporates the transportation planning conversation into the new bill.
All right, thank you, Senator. I'm going to ask Senator Stanley to please speak on this as well.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Senate Bill 1256, which comes from the Housing Commission, is a permissive ability. It gives our localities the ability to undertake this ADU issue. Does not require them, but unless he changed it again, the definitions in Senate Bill 932 and the substitute is different from the definition of an ADU, and I think maybe we should adopt that definition from the Housing Commission in the sense that the ADU definition, it defines it as an independent dwelling unit on a single-family dwelling lot with its own living, bathroom, and kitchen space. My understanding, unless you adopted differently, did not include that in the substitute.
Senator, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the committee at ease for 2 minutes. I want you two to kind of discuss that out, make sure that you guys are on the same page.
Madam Chair, we have, and I would like to incorporate Senator Stanley's definition.
Yes.
Okay, all right, so what we're going to do is we're going to amend your substitute to include Senator Stanley's definition. Council, I just want to make sure that that's going to be in proper order. All right, we'd like to take a motion from the committee. All right. Motion's been made and properly seconded. Discussion on the motion. Senator.
Madam Chair, so just to clarify, Senator Stanley, this substitute does not include that language that is going to be incorporated from the Housing Commission? We've got a new amendment to the substitute?
Madam Chair, I'd answer the gentlelady by saying, yes, the substitute did not include the identical language, but what Senator Saleem has now done is to take the substitute and amend that language from Senate Bill 1256, which includes the definition that an ADU must have a separate kitchen, living area, and bedroom.
All right, and either one of you all, can you speak to basically at this point, is this bill compliant with the recommendation of the commission?
I can speak to that. It is in addition to what Senate Bill 932 had, which sets the parameters for ADUs and the guidelines that localities would need to adopt by July 1st of 2026.
All right, I'm going to ask the first witness to speak on that. Before we go into for and against, right now we are still in neutral fact gathering. So if the person from the Housing Commission could speak, that'd be great. And please identify yourself.
Hi, good morning. Elizabeth Pollan, Director of Virginia Housing Commission. The Virginia Housing Commission agreed to a permissive bill, which is now your bill completely permissive? It doesn't appear to be.
Senator, would you like to respond to that?
It's still not permissive. It still requires that the addition of what the recommendation along with some of the parameters as the zoning ordinance that we set in 932.
All right. So then a question for the witness then is, At this point is the only discrepancy between the recommendation from the commission and the bill as amended that's introduced before us, that it's the difference between a may and a shall.
The very large difference between a may and a shall, yes.
All right, thank you. And Senator Stanley, do you have additional comment?
And I see, and Madam Chair, and I see what he's trying to do, but then, of course, if you look at the Housing Commission Bill 1256, we define what an ADU is and then permit our localities to take that issue up and to make determinations for themselves. I've always learned as former chairman of the local government that one size usually does not fit all, especially with our different regions. And my concern with his bill, of course, then has, starting on lines 105 and continuing, and 105 is the definition, but it then starts to restrict the locality on what it can and can't do, like with side setbacks, rear setbacks, and those kind of things. So I think what we ought to do is, and I've told my good friend here that I'm more than willing to make him chief co, and I think this is the vehicle, but putting that much stuff into it is probably going across the line of what the Housing Commission decided on. And we looked at this for a long time in the Housing Commission.
I'd like to hear for and against, and there's the part of me that's thinking the same part of me that was thinking to put y'all at ease, so you talked it out earlier, that we might want to pass it by for the week, maybe iron this out, because I'm concerned about that's what I'm here for, Senator. All right. Question. Yeah, Senator's recognized.
Sorry, quick question. Are we discussing just the 932, or are we combining the bills? What are we?
Yeah, we're discussing the substitute version of 932 as amended to include the definition that came from Senator Stanley's bill and spoken to by the witness.
And follow up, Madam Chair, Senator Stanley's bill still stands.
Yeah, Senator
Is that
Stanley's
correct?
bill has not been formally incorporated. It's simply adopted the definition, unless council can speak to that differently.
Okay. And so at some point, Madam Chair, follow up, we will hear Senator Stanley's bill.
Yes, council.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, Senator Stanley's bill only dealt with the comprehensive plan aspect. Those provisions have now essentially been added to Senator Salim's substitute, and the definition between the two bills conflicted. So in the substitute, it adopted Senator Salim's definition, but we're now saying we're going to now go back and use Senator Stanley's definition instead in the substitute.
Correct.
All right, thank you. All right, all the further question from the Senator from Henrico.
Thank you, Chairwoman. For staff, for Jeff, so essentially what we would be having a debate on at this point, as I understand it, is whether we want a purely permissive bill that doesn't really do anything, or we want to have a bill that has some standards that the localities have to follow when putting in place an ordinance.
Right, Senator Stanley's bill only dealt with comprehensive plan, which I'm not sure you can call it permissive because it says localities shall consider these things, but it's not mandatory in the same sense that a zoning ordinance is. And then the substitute, Senator Salim's substitute, goes beyond that and covers the mandatory zoning aspects of the ADUs.
Mr. Chair, I think that was a yes.
All right, there's some interest of the committee members to take this by for the week to review, I think, the changes and substitute. So there's a motion and a second to take. Now, this is also with adopted a substitute and incorporated at this point?
No, we did not incorporate. We only adopted the definition from the
Okay. So we'll go ahead and take Senate Bill 932 by for the week. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? So noted. That bill is by for the week.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have another bill. Hopefully, this one's less painful.
We all hope so.
Mr. Chair, do we need to take by 1256 too, or do we just take by both?
Senator Stanley. Do you have a motion to take your Senate Bill 1256 by for the week?
I left all my motions in the courts committee, so
All right.
someone else can do that.
All right. So I hear a motion and a second to take also that bill by for the week. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
No.
So noted. That bill is by for the week.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
The next one I have is Senate
Senator
Bill
Salim.
1171, which provides that localities may by ordinance regulate the use of gas-powered leaf blowers. This bill provides that ordinance may include provisions of civil penalties, that the funds from such civil penalties may be used by localities to assist with the purchase of non-prohibited leaf blower by residents and local businesses. The bill essentially empowers locality to address this issue that impacts their own community, specifically with health issues, with environmental sustainability, and the quality of life that is different from locality to locality. This does not impose a statewide mandate. Instead, with respect to local control, it enables them to make the decision on their own. And essentially a bill that says localities have the power to determine on their own if they deem it's necessary.
Senator Rome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question for the patron. So question I have here is last year when you came before us, I had recommended that what you would do is basically kind of almost like a pilot for this, and that you would limit the authority to be able to adopt this to municipalities, not to be confused with full counties, but just municipalities in Planning District 8, Northern Virginia, and basically kind of see how that goes to start with the rationalization being that you have much more cluster development there than you might have more spread out, say in Western Prince William, where I've got some, 10 acre plus lots, in the northern part of my district, and this wouldn't necessarily work there. Can the senator speak to why this version of the bill is not drawn to just have it be limited to municipalities in Planning District 8?
Mr. Chair and Senator Rome, given that this is not a full mandate, rather an ability that we're giving localities, I did have the conversation with some of the smaller localities and the larger ones, along with the group that brought this bill to us. And they felt if we were to do a pilot program, they would essentially have to come back along with, this leaves the discretion to those localities. So it's essentially saying the groups that came to us are going to go, once we allow localities to have this ability, they can not only lobby, but talk to their supervisors and their county and city folks to pick up their own policies around this. So it essentially takes away the power from us, gives it to localities, and that was the ration behind it. If we, I would, be friendly towards an amendment. However, I would not leave it just to smaller municipalities or cities. I would include, almost everyone in Planning District 8, including the counties.
Okay, so, Mr. Chair, follow-up question.
Senator Rome.
All right, so, Mr. Chair, this is my, I'm throwing you a life preserver. Know how to say yes. Prince William County, this would not be good. This could work pretty well in Falls Church. So municipalities in Northern Virginia being able to adopt this, I think you can get some momentum on the committee. If you go beyond that, I think you might run into some problems.
Senator Sherwood.
Mr. Chair, to make this less painful, I would go ahead and accept that friendly amendment.
Thank you.
Just to keep this attraction going forward.
Mr. Chair, have a motion. I'd like to amend the bill to do the thing I just said.
Jeff. All right, so limiting the bill to Planning District 8 cities and towns. There is a motion. Is there a second?
Mr. Chair.
Is there a second on that amendment? All right, there's a motion and a second on that amendment. All
Chair,
in
point
favor
of
of adopting, we can
clarification.
discuss it.
Okay.
Senator Hackworth.
Is there a population or just all cities and towns?
Within the Planning District 8, which is
Okay.
essentially Northern Virginia.
Thank you.
All right, there's a motion and a second on the said substitute at this point. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? This is for adopting this new substitute language. All right. The substitute is now before the committee. A follow-up discussion. Those in support of now the substituted Senate Bill 1171, please come forward.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Patrick Fanning with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. Our interest in this bill is from the emissions perspective. One study has shown that running one of these leaf blowers, gas-powered, for 1 hour is equivalent to driving a gas-powered vehicle 1,100 miles. So we think this would be a good, permissive, and now regional ability to for localities to choose whether to regulate these type of blowers. So we support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Other speakers? You in favor? Please come up.
I would be in favor.
State your name and.
Good morning, Senate committee members. Yeah, I would be in favor of having the bill apply to all of Virginia, all Virginian locations, because in Arlington, where I live nearby, this amendment by Senator Room would not apply. We live there and the noise just pours into the house. We are totally slammed by this noise. We can't enjoy our own property that we have spent 30, 40 years of our life paying for, and the noise just hustles us back into the house. The stink lingers in the air for quite some time afterwards, and I can't hear my mother on the phone asking me when she should take her medicines. Does she go to the doctor today? It's totally impacting my life, so that's why I came down here. So please have the bill apply to all Virginia locations. Thank you.
Thank you. Those in opposition to Senate Bill 1171, please come forward. I'm sorry, we have two. I'm sorry, we do have just one moment. We have several online in support. All right, please, 2 minutes. We'll allow, my apologies, we'll hold for opposition for just a moment. Those in support that are online, please turn on your camera and state your name and support.
Please turn on your camera, unmute your mic, and begin your testimony. Margaret McKelvey. Yeah. Ma'am, your mic is still muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. I signed up today to speak in support of the original bill, which would essentially affirm localities' power to protect our public health and environment and quality of life. I live in Arlington County, so as one of my colleagues in Quiet Clean Nova just said, this amendment would entirely exclude Arlington County. I think it is much more practical to speak in terms of densely populated areas. Something like Richmond City would be included, although not now that we're talking about Planning District 8, but other very densely populated areas, such as Arlington County, would be totally excluded. So I guess I am here now to speak in opposition rather than in favor of the bill as amended. I think the future of leaf blowers and other landscaping equipment is electric. As the Steel Corporation, which is based in Virginia for its U.S. headquarters, itself,
Thank you, ma'am.
is recommending electric. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
For your either support or opposition to this amendment.
My mind is swirling now. Thank you. Next speaker online.
Cindy Mester, please unmute and begin your testimony.
Cindy Mester, City of Falls Church again, and on behalf of City Council, we support this bill for the emissions point, also that is permissive now by ordinance, and the civil penalties can be a fund to help in the transition. Being in Planning District 8, we can support the substitute, and maybe it's a pilot that can move us broader next session. Thank you.
A question for you, ma'am. Does Falls Church currently procure all of its landscaping service using all electric equipment?
To date, we are purchasing our own in electric and chargers and vehicles, but when we contract out, the vendors do not have enough electric, so we do have gas. That's why we support the fund. Maybe we can help transition some of these businesses.
Okay, so one follow-up to you, ma'am. So you do not require your current contracted landscape services that support the city to use electric-powered. Is that correct?
That is correct. They couldn't
Okay,
fulfill the requirement, so it's a preferred.
Thank you. Any of those online?
One more.
Okay, thank you.
Scott Cameron, please.
Please
turn on
just
your camera.
state your name. We've got to also take opposition. Thank you.
Good morning. My video doesn't seem to be working, but my name is Scott Cameron. I'm chairman of the Northern Virginia Soil and Water Conservation District, which serves Fairfax County, and we strongly support Senator Salim's 1171. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Those in opposition to Senate Bill 1171, please come forward, state your name and opposition. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Brett Vassey. I'm the CEO of the Virginia Manufacturers Association. We are opposed to this bill. We happen to be in Virginia blessed with the largest leaf blower manufacturer in North America, 2,300 employees in Virginia Beach, and their entire supply chain, everything from trimmer lines to housings all the way across the Commonwealth. There are also over 10,000 dealers that distribute these products, both electric and gas-powered. We ask for you to think about a couple of things before you vote today. One, the decision on whether to use gas or electric depends on the situation. Think about right now with wildfires in LA or with Hurricane Helene. You're not doing that with battery. You do need to have the gas-powered. There are applications. Second, when you think about the issue of noise that's been used in previous versions of this bill, every locality can pass an ordinance on noise. I live in an HOA where I can't actually start my lawnmower or my leaf blower before 8 a.m. All of that can control noise. Mr. Chairman, the last thing here is that this is a signal that we have never allowed in the Commonwealth's history, is to delegate to local government the ability to ban a legally manufactured product in the United States. And this is not the right time to do it now. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Mr. Chairman, Rob Bohannon, representing the Virginia Golf Course Superintendents Association, represent 300 courses across Virginia. Our members tell us that in a lot of instances, they switch over to electric equipment when it makes sense. And what they've said too is, we wish the electric blowers worked as good as the gas-powered ones because you can't flood the engines. They're a little bit easier to maintain in that respect. But when you're maintaining a 150-acre property, it just doesn't make sense with all of the batteries and all the charging needed for those. And we're essentially going to look at allowing localities again to ban something you can buy at Home Depot or Lowe's. Thank you.
Thank you. There's one online. We'll take that as well.
Jim Gillespie, please turn on your camera, unmute your microphone, and begin your testimony. Sir, you are a panelist. You can, yeah, there you go.
All right, all right, looks like he's having some technical difficulties. All right, we have questions from the committee. Senator Srinivasan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for the patron. Senator Salim, are there any localities in Northern Virginia that has anything like this in place?
Senator Salim.
Mr. Chair and Senator, currently not that I'm aware of, and they don't possess this ability at the moment.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Senator Hackworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and just speak to the bill and ask the patron a question. I think the opposition has stated very clearly some of the glaring reasons why that we should not pass this bill. But one of the things I'd like to ask the patron is, if I'm a contractor, landscaping contractor, right outside of Plan District 8, and then with the substitute that we passed, and I'm working, would I have to have, if I have gas-powered leaf blowers, if I go inside that, then I would then be required to have a different set of equipment to be able to work inside that Plan of District 8. Is that correct?
Senator Salim.
Mr. Chair and Senator Hackworth, this would allow localities to pick. So if
Sure.
they're in the city of Fairfax versus Fall Church, we're essentially allowing those two localities or any of them within Planning District 8 to make that determination on their own. So it would still be up to the localities, and we're just saying we're giving them that ability.
And follow-up clarification, but if they did
Senator Hackworth.
choose, Mr. Chair, to enact this, then you would essentially have to have two different types of equipment on your landscaping trucks to be able to go inside the Plan District 8. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair and Senator Hackworth, that is correct.
Thank you.
Senator Durant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question's been answered. Thank you.
All right.
Mr. Chair, have a motion?
Senator Rome.
Move to report as amended. Speak to the motion.
Proceed. There's a motion and a second to report. Senator Rome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the reason I made the motion in the first place, or made amendment in the first place, and I understood that Arlington would be affected and be essentially left out from that, even though they are certainly much more urban than, say, a good swath of northwestern Prince William or a good swath of western Loudoun, for that matter, is if, number one, when we're counting votes and we're trying to say, hey, do we have enough to get it through? As written, as introduced, it didn't. And so what I'm trying to do here is say, hey, let's have a pilot program that's limited in scope. Let's see how it goes for what we have here. This is something that I think is reasonable at this point, where we're simply giving that authority in high-density areas, and it's not a requirement for them, and nor is it going to be a major disruptive to the industry that 133 localities in all the towns basically doing this would ensue, right? And so what I'm trying to do here is let's take a first step, and this bill, as amended, is a first step. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, renew my motion.
All right, Senator Suderline.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Speaking to the motion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would suggest that the first step towards Falls Church getting what they hope to have, which is not having all these gas-powered leaf blowers, is by not using tax dollars from their own citizens to have gas-powered leaf blowers. I mean, it seems pretty straightforward to me. And I mean, on behalf of you, I'm pretty disappointed that they would ask anyone to carry a bill for them when they themselves are doing this. They did a disservice to their delegation here, and I won't be voting for the bill.
Mr. Chair, point of clarification. So City of Falls Church did not ask for me to bring this bill. It was constituents in my district, and they just happened to be on the call supporting it, just for clarification.
Thank you. Other comments from the committee? So I will just take a moment to also actually associate a little bit with Senator Suderline. I believe that local governments have the power right now to start to create markets, and this is emerging. This might be a bill that is ready, but I would like to see local governments, if they're going to be interested at the local level, they should put their money where their mouth is and spend. And I think it's important to build markets with landscaping companies over time and not necessarily provide a mandate. I think it's important that you allow the transition to occur. So I can't support the bill as it is, but I hope localities do take action and then start to build markets. And I think this may be a bill in the future that would be viable. So I appreciate the senator's time. So there's a motion and a second to report. Clerk, open the roll.
Ayes 3, noes 12.
That bill fails to report. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, I believe we have worked through, I don't see any other patrons that are not on the committee. We have committee patrons that would like to present. So, actually, one item, Senator Diggs, you have Senate Bill 851 on rainwater systems. Those are typically heard in ag. If it's, I think we have some other members here on ag, it would seem appropriate that that bill be heard in ag.
Mr. Chair, I think that's the way I seem to recall us getting a lot of those bills in ag. So unless there's dissent from the patron.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Diggs.
I would ask you reconsider. This has to do with codifying existing regulations and then making sure that localities cannot require users of these Tier 4 systems to hook up to municipal water when they have an alternative. That's the issue.
Understood. These typically are heard by Ag Committee. I understand it does have a nexus to local government, but we tend to be courteous amongst committees on topic areas and share the love of testimony and bills. So was there a motion to re-refer?
Second.
There's a motion and a second to re-refer Senate Bill 851. Clerk, please open the roll.
Ayes 15, noes 0.
All right, Senator Van Valkenburg. You now have Senate Bills. Yep, 839.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the committee, we'll start with 839, housing near jobs. I'm just going to start with some data that I had pulled about.
Senator, you have some amendments to offer?
Oh, yes, let's move the amendments. Thank you.
All right, is there a motion on the amendments? There's a motion and a second. All in favor of adopting the amendments, say aye. 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 You want to walk us through?
Yeah, so I'll just kind of start with some statistics from the median house sale in the last 5 years, 2019 to 2024, in Virginia. Every locality saw an increase. The lowest was Arlington County with an 18.9% increase, so their homes only went from 610,000 to 725,000. No big deal. Only 2 localities in Virginia were under a 30% increase. The highest increase over those 5 years was Greensville County with a 180.5% increase, 70,000 to 199,000. 5 localities were over 100% increase. Another 6 were over a 90% increase. And that includes, interestingly enough, localities that are losing population. In the Richmond region, the average home sale median price increase in Henrico was 52%. In Richmond, it was 52%. In Chesterfield, it was 54%. In Hanover, it was 55%. In New Kent, it was 48%. And in Goochland County, it was 62%. And finally, 92 localities had a greater than 50% increase in 5 years, and another 24 had a greater than 40% increase. We are literally pricing large swaths of our community out of being able to afford a house in Virginia, in all parts of Virginia. So I have 2 bills. This first one is housing near jobs. I'll explain the basics of it, and then I'll run through the amendments. The basics of the bill is by right residential and commercial zoning. We've seen a big change in commercial zoning over the years as people have migrated online, and we've seen a lot of storefronts become empty, right? But we've also seen multi-use districts become very popular. If you look in Henrico County, that's places like Libby Mill, West Broad Village, Regency. People want to live there. And so that's what the bill does. The amendments
I'll kind of go through them one at a time. Two that we adopted last week. One says 75% of commercial territory, which allows localities to chalk off 25% that they don't think is appropriate for housing. One amendment makes clear that this does not apply to undeveloped areas where it's mainly forest. Okay. There's amendments that note that nothing in this section relieves a developer of having an obligation to pay for infrastructure improvements, to make that clear. And we put in an amendment for Virginia Beach with the military bases because that is unique, and we want to make sure that that base is able to stay there and be there. And so that's what the bill does. But the bill is called Housing Near...
Oh, Senator Rome.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So questions for patron. As the patron was speaking, the amendments started populating on LIS, like right then.
Yeah.
We had like the first two easy ones were already up there. It was the
75 and that affordable.
Yeah, the 75. Yeah, and the other ones. Mr. Chair, could we just have a minute to actually review those amendments? Because I know the senator just discussed them, but I just want to read over what they were.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, move to take by temporarily.
Okay. So move without objection. Senate Bill 839, you have another bill?
Okay.
We'll come back.
Do we want to take that one by temporarily too? Or are we just going to come back to 839 after we do the other one? Okay. Okay. All right, we'll do the other one. All right, the next one is 975. There's an amendment for that, so if we could move that amendment. It's a pretty straightforward amendment.
Okay, there's a motion on the amendment.
So moved.
There's a motion and a second to adopt the amendment. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? The amendment is properly before us.
All right, the amendment just makes clear that if you're already meeting these targets, this bill will not apply to you unless you drop below a certain amount of housing stock. So 975 is going at the similar problem that I noted in my first presentation, which is that we are pricing people out. We do not have enough housing. This bill creates housing targets, a supply target, that a locality on average will meet 1.5% supply growth per year, every year for 5 years, which would get you to 7.5%. I know you had a local government official send you an email saying I was requiring 7.5% growth over the year. That is classic local government hyperbole, trying to get you off the tracks. It's 7.5% over 5 years. And actually that locality, because it meets the supply targets, the law wouldn't even apply to them. But what the bill says is that you need to meet 1.5% growth each year, every year for 5 years. It leaves it completely up to the locality how they do so. They have complete free agency over how to do that. It says if they want to be held harmless, if they don't meet that 1.5%, there's a series of things they can do to be immunized, okay? There's 9 policy areas, you'll see them. I've told the local governments I'm more than willing to negotiate those as well and kind of what that looks like. But if they do 3 of the 9 and they don't reach that growth, they're immunized, they don't have to hit the 1.5%. So really the punishment, the stick on the back end of this bill, which says if you don't meet the 1.5%, the state can override your zoning decisions, is really only for bad faith actors that are not trying and making an earnest attempt to get to the 1.5. If you look at the 9 things that are on there, it's a list of different things that can get us more housing. Minimum lot sizes, zoning ordinances to encourage high density, rezoning land near transit stations for high density, implementing a plan to repurpose office parks and strip malls, eliminating requirements for off-street parking. They get to choose what they want to do within that, right? So none of it is forced on them. They can choose to do none of them and just try to hit the housing targets. But this is about, we need to change the paradigm. We need housing. We need a lot of it. The data's out there about how undersupplied we are. And this is just to essentially change the dynamic of the conversation and to get us to stop going from no to getting to yes. I want to note that 1.5% is really a very soft target, because as long as they're trying to implement some of these changes to get more housing online, they probably don't have to hit the 1.5.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Bagby.
Mr. Chair, is the only thing that the only sort of punishment is additional oversight? Is that the only?
So, Mr. Chair, Senator Bagby.
Valkenburg.
Right. So at the end of 5 years, if they haven't hit that 1.5% average over 5 years and they have not done the things that could immunize them from punishment, then the state could override their zoning until they got to that 1.5% average. Okay. Now, the easiest way for that to never happen is for every locality to just try some of these zoning measures that would hopefully get us building more. So really, in practice, you would hope that nobody would face that punishment because they would just try some of these things. But yeah, at the end of that 5 years, the stick is that there's an appeal process to a state board that could override their zoning until they got to that 1.5% per year, 7.5%.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Srinivasan, followed by Senator Hackworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for the patron. It's very commendable that we are trying to increase the housing stock coming from Loudoun and Northern Virginia. I appreciate the concern. I just have a question. I'm curious, Senator, what is the baseline? Like you're saying you're giving full freedom to the localities. It applies to all localities. What's the baseline? What's the denominator, numerator? How do they go about doing this? I mean, some counties may be different than where we come from.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Go ahead, proceed, Senator.
Mr. Chair, Senator Srinivasan, good question. Different counties are different, which is why there's a whole bunch of free will in here, in this bill, and a whole bunch of different ways they can go about it, right? And why we're not prescriptive about how they go about it. The 1.5% is just based on what we see with some of the localities that are doing the most building. It's meant to be a reasonable number. Now, smaller localities, right, have less needs, but as a percentage of housing, it's less housing, right? And once again, I think the 1.5 is kind of, I think you should think of it as like a standard to try to attain, but you don't actually have to attain if you're trying to put in place some of these measures. So for example, if you put in place some of these measures and housing is just not getting built in your locality for whatever reason, you're fine, right? You're immunized from the punishment. The attempt is to try. But I would note that a lot of localities that are losing population are also seeing pretty big increases in housing costs. So for example, Brunswick County from 2020 to 2023 lost 5% population, but their housing costs went up 83.4%. Buchanan County lost 5.7% population, but the average home sales price went up 47.9%. Charles City County lost 5.1% population, but their home values went up 44.2%. Greensville County lost 4.6% population, and their home prices went up 180%. And so I would say to you that while different counties are different, I think we all have a housing supply problem. And the one thing I didn't mention in this bill, that one thing you can do to bring down that supply target, so rather than be 1.5, it would be 1.25, is if you do affordable housing or if you refit neglected homes, right? And so in some communities, refitting abandoned homes and bringing them online is one of the best things you can do for supply. There's another thing I didn't do this year. I'm going to do next year.
Thank you,
I can
Senator.
keep going. I can keep going.
Tell.
Yeah.
You definitely had your coffee this morning. I've got still other senators in the queue for questions. Yeah. Senator Hackworth, followed by Senator Pekarsky.
Yes, Senator. Mr. Chair, and to Senator Van Valkenburg, I commend you for this bill. Nobody's a greater advocate for housing than myself, I feel like, on this committee. The one thing that I guess I have, and you're answering some of that as you're speaking with your coffee kicking in. So I would like to talk to you in depth about this. I may just abstain from the vote to be able to have a greater, some of those areas is in our district or former districts. And, one of the things that we have, Mr. Chairman, that is an issue in Southwest Virginia is the cost of housing is what it is. But when you're having first-time home owners or whoever, the appraisal, you cannot get comps to be able to get loans to do that. So that's an issue. So there's a lot of, I think, I commend you for trying to do this. Make it get on board with it. I just need more information on it, and we can talk offline on that.
Mr. Chair, if I could just say two things to that, real brief. I'll be brief. Mr. Chair, Senator Hackworth, I think I'd say two things to that, which is one is, let's keep talking. And I think when we think about those, especially those 9 factors that are in there that a locality could do to immunize themselves, I think we should continue thinking them through, right? And continue to think through what's the best way to make this work for everybody, right? And the second thing I would say to that is I just want to reemphasize, I would consider it a soft cap. This is us trying to get more housing online, and if localities are making a good faith effort, they're not going to have to hit that 1.5%, because to your point, there are other problems, right? I would argue supply is a huge part of the problem, but there are other problems, right? So, yep.
Senator Pekarsky.
Thank you, Mr.
Followed by
Chair.
Williams Graves.
Question for the patron. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I had similar questions and concerns as my colleague here to the left. However, another thing I think about when we're looking at localities that are not all the same, that don't have the same needs, one of the issues in Fairfax County, of course, is overcrowded schools, all overcrowded schools. In fact, my district needs a new high school, and we've been working for years to try to figure out where to place it, and we have gotten nowhere on that. So my question is, how do we deal with that very real reality and the strains that more people, more children would bring to a locality?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Senator Pekarsky. I think there's a couple answers to that, and I can get you the data I'm about to refer to later. But I think a lot of studies show that when you add density, particularly when it's multifamily density, you don't necessarily add all that many spots into a school. So I think that's one part to note. I think the second part to note, though, is just that what's the bigger problem? Is the bigger problem some slight overcrowding at schools, or is the bigger problem that we're literally driving our children out of Virginia because they can't afford to live here? I mean, I'll say to you that in the last 5 years, Henrico County has become unaffordable for public servants, let alone service workers. And I put this in an op-ed, but I'm at my lunch table at school, and every teacher that's my age and older has a home because we bought one, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and we got that capital, right, with a starter home. But those aren't affordable anymore, and so younger teachers are having to leave. Right, I've got this great census data for the housing near jobs about how far people have to commute. It ain't pretty, and so I think when you're thinking about, well, what's the bigger problem here? I think the bigger problem is that young professionals can't afford to live here, and I think localities can solve the school problem. I'm not going to say that it's going to be perfect, right? And there is of course give and take with everything, yes. But I think the bigger problem is housing.
Thank you, Senator. Has this bill been heard by the Housing Commission yet?
It has not been heard by the Housing Commission.
Just curious. Thank you.
I would not like it to go there, though.
So, Senator Williams Graves.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am torn with this bill. I flip-flop between yes and no. And if there's a conversation that you're going to have with Senator Hackworth, I'd like to be in on that conversation. I'm probably going to abstain for now to get more information and to put that into some more perspective. But that's where I'm probably going to end up.
Mr. Chair, can I make a suggestion? Can I suggest we take, because I don't think there's really a fiscal impact on this, can we take this by for a week so people can ponder it? Because I'm more than willing.
This bill's been requested by finance.
Oh, it has been.
If
right,
it is to report,
well,
so you're not getting out of that trap.
Okay, all right. well, then I'd like to move it forward and keep the conversation going.
Senator Srinivasan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question for the patron. Senator, do you envision regular reporting on this if this were to be in place? How do you envision this being transparent?
Yeah,
I mean, this involves more than 100 localities in the Commonwealth. Thank you.
Yeah, good question. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Senator Srinivasan. I mean, I think the first thing is we're going to see which localities immunize themselves, because that happens before anything else has to happen, right? And so the measures are in there to see who's being a good faith actor, and that is going to take a lot of the localities out of the picture, because they're going to do the things to try to get housing, but to also protect themselves. And from there, you're going to have a much smaller pot. And then it goes, there's your other answer is, the group of 3 that's created as the state kind of board to overlook this. But they're not going to have to look at every locality, because some localities are already doing this. So they're going to be already set off because the amendment we adopted. A lot of localities are going to implement some of these things, and then we're going to see what happens. And so I think it's not quite as broad as you think it is, Senator.
Thank you. All right, we need to take those in support of Senate Bill 975. Please come forward and state your name. And 3 minutes.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, fellow senators. My name is Eli Weinger, and I'm speaking in support for SERVE, Students for Equity and Reform in Virginia. Being mindful of time, I'll quickly go through. In Charlottesville, students need to find housing 9 months in advance of when they're going to sign their next lease. If you don't have housing for the next school year by November to December, you're pretty much out of luck. Especially if you want to be within walking distance. Furthermore, looking around at housing, we've seen places, I was looking for an apartment where it was 119 square feet for $1,200 a month, not including utilities. The housing market is insane, and we have a lot of ways to address that crisis, and this bill is just one piece of that puzzle. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Next speaker, good morning. We've got about 10 lined up, so.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Erin Corman with the Realtors. Just super quick, because you guys have heard me say this for years now. We have a housing affordability crisis, and the fix is increasing housing supply. So the Realtors strongly support this bill.
Thank you. Good morning.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Barrett Hardiman on behalf of the Commonwealth Housing Coalition. We also support this bill. The local governments are doing what they need to do and looking at local housing issues, but we've reached a critical mass in our housing crisis, and we need a statewide solution. And this is the statewide solution, or the beginnings of it. So I would encourage you to support the bill. If not, I would also agree with Senator Van Valkenburg to not send it to the Housing Commission. Thank you.
Morning, Scott Pedowitz with the Apartment and Office Building Association. Building on the previous speakers, we will not get out of our housing supply crisis by relying on other localities to solve it. This gets everybody in the game. Encourage you to support. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Hi, Chairman. Laura Dodds with Housing Opportunities Made Equal. I ask that you support the bill and provide some state leadership in solving our affordable housing crisis. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Isabel McLean with Virginia Housing Alliance, and we also support the bill and agree with the previous statements. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Ryan O'Toole, Freedom, Virginia, would associate ourselves with the comments from the Realtors especially. We need more supply to solve our housing crisis. Thank you.
Good morning, Elizabeth Rafferty here on behalf of the Home Builders Association of Virginia, and we also support the bill.
Mr. Chairman, Randy Grumbine representing the Virginia Manufactured and Modular Housing Association. In real estate, there's 3 terms, and that is supply, supply, supply. So we're for this bill.
Good morning. I'm Micah Green. I am a resident of Henrico County, who is just part of a large group of people who are trying to buy homes and are getting priced out. And so just as a constituent, we would like to support this bill so that people my age can afford a home in the areas we want to live in.
Thank you. We did have someone online, but they are now gone. Those in opposition to Senate Bill 975, please come up, state your name, and we'll likewise have 3 minutes.
Morning, Mr. Chairman. Joe Lurch with the Virginia Association of Counties. We appreciate the patron meeting with us last week to discuss his passion for the bill. we would say that many of our members have that same passion about how we get more housing and more affordable housing for more people. Our opposition really is rooted in two things. One is the mandate that's in here, and you will see that the Commission on Local Government has issued a fiscal impact statement talking about what this would require of localities. But the other part is having a housing board, a statewide housing board with authority to overturn local land use decisions. We'll also note that already in comprehensive plans, localities are to address housing and affordable housing. So that's just the basis of our opposition. Thank you.
James Chirpin, Coalition of High Growth Communities. We would like to associate ourselves with VACO, but also this has begun or continued a very needed discussion, which is a step in the right direction. And I believe the Housing Commission would be a good place to continue that discussion.
There's clearly a dislike for that option by some people here, so next speaker.
Hello, I'm Laura Bateman. I'm here today on behalf of the Virginia First Cities Coalition. Our members are doing all they can to get more housing stock and are resolute that the state should not take control of what is a very local process. Can give you a lot of examples. One that really resonates, I think, for one of our small member cities of Virginia First Cities is that they currently have over 2,500 units of housing that are in the pipeline, but the developers aren't building it. So to charge, and I know there are a lot of different options, but our member cities are all so diverse, and some are very sort of rural cities. So I guess the bottom line for our members, and I've been asked by VML to associate their remarks with Virginia First Cities, is that the state shouldn't force approval for projects that are incompatible and not of adequate design. And there's just too many forces beyond the control of our landlocked cities, like mortgage rates, et cetera.
We have a couple more speakers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Kristen Kanaski with Fairfax County. The county is approving residential units faster than they can be built. This bill puts statewide metrics in place without any regards to the economic conditions or what's already been approved. In Tyson's Corner alone, the county has approved 25,000 units that remain unbuilt. And based on this bill, we can't approve the use for residential and be responsible for building them. And this bill would put us on the hook for both. So I spoke about Tyson's Corner, same thing, but worse in Reston. And we had a 60% increase in square footage for residential use. It's ready to be built. Fairfax County remains open and approved, but this bill would only hinder our efforts.
Thank you. We have one more in person. I think we have 3 online, so I want to provide a little bit of time there. Please be brief so I can just have acknowledged opposition for those who have been waiting online as well.
Yes, sir.
James.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I associate myself with many of the comments that have already been made. I want to thank the patron for meeting with us. We did have a good discussion. We think there should be more discussion on this. The intent is well placed. And so referring it to the Housing Commission is what we recommend on behalf of the planners of Virginia.
Thank you. Those online, please state your name and opposition, anything new, and just 30 seconds, please be brief.
Cindy Mester, please unmute and begin your testimony.
Cindy Mester, City of Falls Church, oppose this bill, but appreciate the substitute. The City of Falls Church will be immunized during the initial at 2.2 square mile. At some point will be built out and unable to achieve that goal. More importantly, I want to highlight that we have specific zoning districts for mixed use where we intentionally have residential and commercial and retail services and sales, which goes through a full community engagement and zoning ordinance process, and that is why we oppose a residential mandate in residential and commercial. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Martha C., please turn on your camera, unmute, and begin your testimony. Apologies, Ann Gregorian.
Yes, thank you. I oppose for all the reasons stated. In addition,
would like to state that I'm very disappointed in the patron statement and dismissal of the effect on local school districts with increased housing, especially since he's an educator. He should fully understand the challenges that localities face with sudden increase in housing. So I oppose. Thank you.
I actually do.
Thank you very much. Next speaker.
Martha C., your turn this time. Please unmute and begin your testimony.
Yes, my name is Martha Cohen. I'm from Henrico County, and I also associate with all the other comments. I also want to give, I just want to say that percentages don't really mean anything. 1.5% in one community is very different from 1.5% in another. And really mandating housing targets from the state completely disenfranchises a local community. One personal story, I lived in a town, the sponsor of having some building in the town said that there will be no impact on the school. The buildings were built. The next year, my son's school, the public school, had 60 new children. 60 new children in a school that was already giving music class in the hallways. So let's really know what we're talking about. And I really appreciate the thoughtful questions from all the legislators, because this is a very important bill and can change a lot of things. So thank you for listening to my comment.
Thank you for joining us this morning. All right, the bill is before the committee.
Can I, really brief?
Mr.
Really
Chair.
brief, can I respond? Really briefly? Yeah.
Senator Van Valkenburg, I cannot hear you. What would you?
Oh, can I just really respond?
I said the bill is before the committee. Is not open for additional.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Rome.
I have a motion, which is to move to report as amended. I'd like to speak to the motion.
Okay, there's a motion.
Is there a second?
What was that? I'm sorry.
Is there a motion?
Oh, second.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Chair.
To report and re-refer to finance.
All right, so thank you. To report as amended and re-refer to finance. So, Mr. Chair, the patron has met with me on not only this bill, but the other bill, and rather inconveniently keeps making amendments I asked for. And so under Jefferson's manual, I especially feel compelled to do this. But in particular, with this bill, where it says, the amendment says, but shall not apply to any locality that has at least 7.5% growth in total housing stock January 1st, 2020, 2025. And then it gets into the 1% thing after that. That was an acknowledgement that in the city of Manassas Park, we have construction going on right now. We've had brand new construction going on in city of Manassas. We have a number of projects in Prince William County, some of which I like, some of which I don't, but the fact is they are happening. And so, you know, I think the senators offered in good faith to amend the bill to people who are willing to work with them, and so that's why I'm supporting.
Further discussion on the motion to report and re-refer to finance? Senator Diggs.
Thank you, sir. To me, what this bill does is forces localities to grow at a rate that they very well may not want to do. I don't understand how a locality that is losing population would be forced to increase their housing stock. Where would these people live that are moving out? Rising costs are as much due to inflation and regulations as anything else. What we need is a housing supply of where it's needed, not in localities that are losing population. And many localities want to retain their character. They do not want to grow at a forced rate. They may not want to grow at all or grow at a very slow rate. They do not want to become urban areas. And as opposed to carrying a big stick, we may want to offer some incentives for localities to do this, and localities can do these things on their own. And I understand that there is a housing crisis, but we should not force localities to be the kind of communities that they don't want to be. So I would be voting no to the bill. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chair, let me just start where I ended. One is, this gives the locality the complete control over how they want to go about it so they can keep their local character. Two, it's a soft cap. If they implement a couple things, they won't necessarily have to reach it. And three, Greensville County's lost 5.7% of its population, and its housing cost has gone up 180%. So I think the people who are still there are facing a housing crisis.
Senator, I will wrap up just with a few of my own observations. This is a little bit different from others in terms of providing basically a housing approval board usurping the authority of local elected officials, which I have a little concern about. I think if the rates continue, we may have to come back to this. But Senator Williams-Graves.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If the bill is unsuccessful, would it be appropriate to have a motion to refer it to the Housing Commission? It does. Okay.
Yeah, the typical motion would be PBI with a letter if it is not successful. But the motion on the table is to report and re-refer to Finance. Clerk, open the roll.
Ayes 4, noes 8, 3 abstentions.
Senator Van Valkenburg, would you like a letter?
No.
Okay. Going back to Senate Bill 835, I believe it is.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'll tell you the reason why is because,
Sorry, 839.
I don't know where we left off with this. I think we left off with the amendments. So I had explained the bill and explained the amendments. So
Yep, Senator Roan,
I'm not.
do you have any follow-up?
I just wanted to make the motion to adopt the committee amendments.
I think we did. We did do that, didn't we?
Okay.
We did do that. So once again, right, this is by right residential and commercial, and 75%. It carves out 25% for the localities. We put in a bunch of amendments about where it doesn't apply. So if it's undeveloped land, the military base in Virginia Beach, which we want to be thoughtful about, it notes that the developers have to still be responsible for infrastructure. I think the thing I want to note is that just because land is commercial doesn't mean it's going to become residential. You know, some commercial land is held by people who want it to be commercial, right? They don't. That's the intent. So this is still going to be up to kind of the people who own the land whether or not it's going to turn to residential. Once again, we have a housing crisis. And we need to do things that are going to up supply, and so I will stop there.
All right, and I don't believe we had taken yet support for Senate Bill 839 from our prior discussions, so if there's those here in the community that would like to support 839, please come forward. Those in support, good morning.
Good morning again. Scott Pedowitz with the Apartment and Office Building Association. This bill brings those two together. It allows us to develop comprehensive communities. I live in a community with apartments and office buildings. It works well as our economy changes. Encourage you to support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Barrett Hardin with the Commonwealth Housing Coalition. We also support this legislation. Housing near your employment centers is where you want your people to be. It taxes your resources less, it taxes your infrastructure less, and it allows people to get to their jobs without having to sit in traffic for a long time. So we support the bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Good morning.
Hi, Chairman. Laura Dodds with Housing Opportunities Made Equal. Thank the patron for bringing this bill. It'll open up housing opportunities near good-paying jobs for residents. And we support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, Elizabeth Rafferty here on behalf of the home builders. Again, clearly there's a housing shortage. It's really important that developers have all the tools necessary to increase the housing supply and stock.
Thank you.
Morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Ryan O'Toole, Freedom, Virginia. I'll say again, we do have a housing supply. We believe, we have a housing crisis. We strongly believe we need more supply. We urge you to support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Isabel McLean with Virginia Housing Alliance, and we also support the bill and thank the patron for bringing it. I've also been authorized to share that the Virginia Poverty Law Center also supports this bill.
Thank you.
Good morning, Erin Corman with the Realtors, and for all the reasons already stated, we support the bill.
Good morning, Honorable Chair, fellow senators. My name is Eli Weinger, here with Students for Equity and Reform in Virginia. We're supporting this bill. I would also note that many of the concerns that are often raised with increased stock of affordable housing is concerns with regard to infrastructure, that the roads might not be fit to handle. And so by allowing folks to live closer to where they work, allowing folks to walk to work, to bike to work, it relieves some of that additional stress. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Sarah Thomas on behalf of Virginia Association for Commercial Real Estate, and we support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Micah Green, again, just a constituent of Henrico County, but I live near the Libby Mill district, and it's a wonderful place, and it's really great to be able to very easily get to businesses and, from where you live. So.
Thank you. Those in opposition to Senate Bill 839, please come forward, state your opposition.
Mr. Chairman, Joe Lurch with the Virginia Association of Counties in opposition. We just note that this would require every locality to basically rewrite their zoning ordinance to make this a by right use in commercial districts. This is not only a cost, but it also disrupts the local planning process. We have many of our members. I know that Henrico has been given as an example of the Libby Mill area where they've mixed commercial and multifamily, but that was the decision they made that was right for that area. So we respectfully oppose this bill for those reasons. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, Laura Bateman on behalf of Virginia First Cities, and our cities are opposed to the bill on the basis of it eroding local authority. And I've also been asked to share that VML associates their opposition to the bill with that of VFC and VACO. Thanks.
Thank you.
James Turpin, Coalition for High Growth Communities, and we would like to associate with VACO and VML and concern about the expansion of by right. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good morning, Kristen Kanaski with Fairfax County. The senator in Fairfax County share a lot of the same goals. And the reality is what we're seeing is not every commercial district is appropriate for residential. But where it is, the county has long embraced for the last 50 plus years mixed use development. It's been crucial for our development in Tysons, Reston, and elsewhere. Approved units aside, the commercial districts that we're looking at in Fairfax County are the corporate headquarters for 10 Fortune 500 companies, over 400 foreign-owned companies, and over 10,000 tech companies. These industries range across the board. Many of the strictly commercial areas that remain do not have the necessary infrastructure already in place. And I want to correct something. My interpretation of this amendment regarding the infrastructure would not apply here because it's still a by right use. And the way that we are able to negotiate to account for the impacts to our infrastructure are through proffers. This would not allow the county to negotiate any proffers. So we're talking about schools, streets, stop signs, the whole breadth of those issues. And requiring residential by right means that we're not able to mitigate the impact to commercial. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have several of those that are online as well, so I need to get to those.
Anne Gregorian, please turn on your camera, unmute your microphone, and begin your testimony.
Yes, thank you. I oppose this bill because it represents a massive overreach by state government. It gives developers an outside voice in local issues, and especially without any infrastructure requirements is especially egregious for me as a local resident of a smaller community. And I'll be brief, but it disregards all planning efforts and dialogues by residents to gain consensus for what works best in the locality. And it disenfranchises individual voices of everyday Virginians, lack of tolerance for diversity and thought, of handling the very diverse housing needs throughout the Commonwealth.
Thank you so much. Next speaker.
Martha C., please turn on your camera, unmute your microphone, and begin your testimony.
Yes, I agree with all the comments that were made. There's a real concern with by right. It will totally disenfranchise the community. And I also lived in that community where the 60 children that were not supposed to come to school came to school the next year. They also converted office buildings, and there was, and we didn't even have by right, and they didn't even get enough things to take care of the infrastructure, and there were water main breaks and et cetera, et cetera.
Thank
So this has real implications for the entire community.
Senator Van Valkenburg, you're going to break some water mains. Next speaker. All right, the bill, Senator Sturtevant, you're in the queue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to commend the patron for the several bill. I mean, he's clearly identified a real problem that exists, and he has taken a bold stand on ways to try to address it. One of the concerns that I've had that I hope you can comment on is, I think in this bill and the one that we just talked about, there is, I think, an erosion of local control over zoning and approvals. And so I wonder if you could just comment on that. Is that just sort of a policy difference of this is a big enough problem and we need to do this here?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Senator Van Valkenburg.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Senator Sturtevant, good question. Yeah, it is some erosion of local control over housing in some ways, right? I mean, I think if you look at the last bill, it was a very slight touch for good faith actors, because as long as they went about doing it in the way they saw fit, with certain guidelines, right, they'd have been immunized, and it would only have been the truly kind of bad faith actors that would have faced that board at the end. I think with this one, we've tried to create enough leeway, right, where they have some control over it. And I also just think kind of when you think about, I mean, I can't keep up with the hyperbole of local governments. It's just, so I'm not even going to try. But when you think about, where this housing is going to go, I think it's a lot like the ADU conversation, where it ain't going to be as much as you think it is, right? Because there still is the local property owner's decisions. There still is the oversight that the local government can have. And the local government can still do proffers on these projects, by the way, right? And so there still is all that give and take, right, in the bill. At the end of the day, does it erode some local authority? Yeah, it does. But I would argue to you, just based on the statistics I've given, that this is more than a local problem. This is a state problem. And we've heard about the good faith actors. Anecdotally, we've heard about the good faith actors, and I believe that they are. I'm not saying I don't believe that. But housing costs are going up dramatically for a reason. And states as liberal as California and as conservative as Montana have implemented this bill, a version of this bill. And the reason that they've done that is because housing prices have gone up so much that they're pricing their people out. They're pricing the people that live in the communities out. They're pricing working people out. They're pricing out the people that have lived in the community for decades and generations. And we're getting to a tipping point in the state where if we don't act, we're going to be in the same position. And I don't think that's a position we want to be in, because it's bad for business, it's bad for families, it's bad for communities. And so I guess the answer is yes.
Senator Rome, followed by Senator Diggs.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair, speaking to the bill. So first off, the patron, not only in meeting with me, he made the amendments that I asked for in terms of making sure that we were protecting tree canopy. That was a big part of this, and he put in line 15, introduced after Romanet I, apply in undeveloped areas that are covered by a tree canopy of at least 60%. Whole point of that was to make sure that we didn't just suddenly have a lot of woods disappearing just because someone wanted to build somewhere, which is one of the biggest grievances I have with development in general, especially in Northern Virginia, is that constantly, whether it's residential or commercial or industrial developers, quite frankly, we keep seeing them target the woods as undeveloped potential instead of redeveloping existing parcels. And so the senator took a good stab at making sure that we can meet on that, and I commend him for it. Next part here is making sure that basically that there's going to be predictability with this, which is why he put in part of the amendment that says, Once the multifamily residential development has been approved in a commercial or business zoning district pursuant to this section, localities shall not approve a commercial or business use on this property that is adjacent to the multifamily residential development that is different from the use that has been established at the time of the multifamily residential development was approved. That means that you can't just suddenly change the use of this thing and then a bunch of people are going to end up living next to a data center because of it. So I think the senator is really trying to work in good faith, and I'm pretty sure he would be open, if you kept the discussion going to the Senate floor and beyond, that if there's other good faith amendments that could be made to kind of keep it working, great. But then the bottom line on this, I think, also is the General Assembly going to deal with affordable housing? I watch a lot of people campaign on, hey, we got to do something about affordable housing. Bills are coming up, bills that cause me heartburn when they're introduced, but the senator sits down and talks it out, and then calls me and then talks it out some more. And so I have no reason to oppose something that I think is a good faith effort.
Senator Diggs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Speaking to the bill. Like others on here, I want to commend you for trying to solve a difficult problem. It's just the way we go about it is different. In fact, this morning, I was very pleased to see that the City of Williamsburg Planning Commission had voted to approve a multi-story bank building to turn it into multifamily housing. So localities can do this on their own. Again, I would rather see some incentives of some kind as opposed to forcing localities because one size does not fit all. But I do appreciate your efforts.
Is there a motion?
Move to report as amended.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second to report Senate Bill 839 as amended. Clerk, open the roll.
Ayes 5, noes 7, 3 abstentions.
All right. That bill fails to report. Thank you, Senator. I think there's a lot of interest in this issue. I think the question is of how to get there. Next up, Senator Aird. You have Senate Bill 1267.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Before you should be Senate Bill 1267. Mr. Chair, coming off this conversation of, the need for housing options, this is not exactly that, but I will say that as a result of the housing affordability crisis, you have families that are now being forced to remain in properties that are no longer habitable. What we're trying to do with Senate Bill 1267 is improve the code by creating a larger incentive for landlords to create a livable environment for their multi-family residential spaces. Mr. Chair, I will also add that last year we attempted a number of ways to try and hold what I consider to be slumlords accountable, and with bipartisan support passed many of them, and they were vetoed. We have an obligation to try and do something to hold these absentee property owners accountable, and this is one way. Specifically, Mr. Chair, this would create for an initial summons of not more than $200 and not more than $500 for each additional. However, for any repeated violations, and I'm talking about likely very egregious violations in these properties that are zoned for multifamily, this will allow for $1,000 for the second violation, but no more than $1,500 for those following. So, Mr. Chair, it's my hope that this bill will allow localities another tool to hold these property owners that are violating, maintaining their property in livable standards by way of the zoning that they are placed in, a tool to hold these property owners accountable. And that really is the bill, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Those in support of Senate Bill 1267, please come forward.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. On behalf of the City of Hampton, we support the bill and thank the patron for submitting the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. On behalf of the City of Hampton, we support the bill and thank the patron for submitting the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. We, Brent McKenzie with the City of Virginia Beach, and we support the legislation as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Those in opposition to Senate Bill 1267, please come forward. All right, Senator Sewerline.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask Senator Aird a few questions, I think.
All right, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, as I was listening to Senator Aird talk about the absentee landlords, I think I've read way too many similar bills in a short time, and I can't recall. I'm trying to find somewhere in the bill, does it specify that it would be absentee landlords, or could this also potentially fall on units that also have the owner in them as well?
Mr. Chair, the reference to the code violations, that is specifically what I'm referring to when I talk about absentee landlords or slumlords. We're talking about code violations to multifamily units that, in my opinion, from various imaging that I've seen specifically in my district, this is not your average property owner. This is not your average property manager or landlord. This is someone who has these properties in possession. They have been cited multiple times, likely, by these code violations, and that is why I'm referring to them as slumlords and/or absentee property owners.
Any follow-up questions of patron? Senator Sturdivant.
Question for the patron. It looks like it puts a cap of $6,000 during a 12-month period on these multifamily specific zoning violations. Is there currently a cap in place for zoning violations without the revisions of this bill?
Senator Ayer.
Mr. Chair, let me pull the language out, but I do believe there are limitations to the current fine and fee structure for this, which is why we went with a capped approach. And I think also when we were discussing the best approach to take from a fee standpoint, we wanted to ensure that while it's an incentive for the property owner to act, it's not intended to bankrupt them. Excuse me, let me pull it out really quickly.
Thank the senator. I think it's line 7, 5,000 cap, right? So this is covered.
Thank you. Yes, that's correct.
All right, the bill is before the committee. Is there a motion?
Move to report. Second.
There's a motion and a second to report Senate Bill 1267. Clerk, open the roll.
Ayes 11, noes 2, 1 abstention.
All right, that bill reports. Next up, I believe that was all of yours, correct? And Senator, next up is Senator Bagby, Senate Bill 1254.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 1254 is a bill that we saw last year. 1254 would require, we made some changes, but would require Virginia localities, cities with populations greater than 20,000 and counties with populations greater than 100,000 to incorporate community health and an environmental justice strategy in their comprehensive plan process to raise positive community health outcomes by identifying the sitting of air, water, and other pollution sources with their jurisdictions. I think there are a number of individuals here to speak on and about this bill for and against, and so I will pause there and allow you to call them, or ask you to call them.
Thank you, Senator Bagby. Those in support of Senate Bill 1254, please come up and state your support. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Senators. My name is Kim Sutterth, and I am representing Virginia Interfaith Power and Light. I also live in an environmental justice community in coastal Virginia. You may have heard on the news that there's been lots of climate-driven disasters here lately with wildfires in California, and also our susceptibility to superstorms, which are unpredictable at times. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, they estimate that cost of climate-driven disasters could go over $165 billion with a B, billion dollars. And just for context, that's more than Warren Buffett is worth. This is very costly, both in dollars, but also to people. This bill will require our most populous localities to incorporate and increase focus on the community's health. This is great for rural communities as they incorporate healthy community strategies like broadband internet access, job training. It also increases public engagement, and as well as increasing protections for those who are most vulnerable, like myself. Thank you very much, and we do support this bill.
Thank you. Next speakers.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Patrick Fanning with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. We want to thank the senator for bringing the bill, and we support this as a logical next step for achieving environmental justice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Lillian Anderson. I'm with Virginia Conservation Network. We support this bill as it would help create a roadmap to empower citizens to engage more deeply with their localities, to incorporate environmental justice more into the planning process, and we thank the patron for bringing it forward.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Zach Lemaster here on behalf with Gentry Law Consulting, here on behalf of our client, the Virginia League of Conservation Voters, and we thank the patron for his work on this, and we support the bill.
Trip Pollard with the Southern Environmental Law Center. We also support the bill. Thank you.
Stuart Schwartz, Coalition for Smarter Growth. We support the bill. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Any online? No. Are those in opposition to Senate Bill 1254? Please come up. Mr. Vassy.
Mr. Chairman, Brett Vassy, CEO of the VMA. The Virginia manufacturers and our member companies, we support environmental justice standards and protocol and have been working at the state level with the various commissions to develop, in essence, a clear line of compliance for companies that are in these designations. We do not have one yet. This presupposes that we would end up with potentially 130 different rules at the local level, which is really beyond compliance. This is a very complicated set of rules that need to be standardized. We ask you to keep that at the statewide level. And let me give you just one example, just the simple definition of fence line community. Fence line community, for instance, we'll use the city of Hopewell. We have a factory that has been in the same place for over 100 years. The local government chose to rezone everything to its fence line in Section 8 housing. That was not our choice. And now that is an impact on those communities. There is no other choice but to move them or to move the factory. That's the dichotomy that we have set up with EJ without a clear set of rules that we can all comply with. And we need that standardized at the state level. The other thing I would say is in this particular bill, the provisions, if you look at item 3 on line 29, it asks for compounded health risks. That does not exist anywhere else in the code right now to our knowledge. And at the state level, that has not been defined. The other thing for the members is items 5 and 6, starting on lines 36. That is carried forward from last year's failed bill on healthy communities. This has nothing to do with EJ on environment. This is an expansion of EJ definition that we're currently working on both at the federal and state level.
I'm sorry,
Thank you,
Mr.
Chair.
Bagby. The last one, the last.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Bagby, item 5 and 6, starting on line 36, those are carried forward from your bill last year on healthy communities. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Others in opposition to Senate Bill 1254? All right, no one online. All right, the bill is before the committee.
Move to report.
There's a motion, a second to report 1254. Clerk, open the roll. So-
Ayes 8, noes 7.
All right, that bill reports. All right, I'm going to present my three bills. We're going to pass the chair over to Senator Rome.
1300. Okay, Senator McPike, you have your charter change bill for the town of Dumfries.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Senate Bill 13 is at the request of the town of Dumfries. Primarily, the town seeks to amend the charter to improve the governance between the legislative and executive branch, essentially streamlining many of its services. So you'll see in the bill separations between the city attorney as a separate class and higher, town manager sort of dividing responsibilities. You see that in sort of city manager forms of government. So it's really modernizing the structures and separations of who can hire and fire. That's delegating that authority to the town manager. Likewise, for all staff below that, as well as the town attorney. So it sets out very clear. And so that is the update to the town charter, and appreciate the committee's consideration.
And the town requested this officially?
Yes, okay. by adoption of ordinance back in December. So I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, all those in favor? Or I'm sorry, all those who in favor who would like to speak, please do. Thanks.
Good morning, members of the committee. Madam Chairman, I'm Sandra Robinson, the town attorney for Dumfries, and we want to thank Senator McPike for bringing this bill, and we support it strongly. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here in favor? Anyone online? Anyone opposed?
Move to report.
All right, discussion. Senator from Roanoke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'd ask, is this going to be the first time in decades that we allow a runoff election in Virginia? Is there anywhere else that we currently allow runoffs? I thought we haven't had runoffs in Virginia since the 70s.
Rely on council if there's any other code section. I'm not familiar with other charters that may have that provision still outstanding.
Madam Chair, it just seems a bit unusual to me that a House of Delegates seat goes to drawing of lots, but a council seat in Dumfries is going to require the taxpayers of Prince William to pay for another election.
Madam Chair, I would state...
I mean, I don't live in Prince William, but it's just curious to me.
I would state, and I'll have someone else speak to it, but I'll state to the senator, the population in Dumfries in terms of an expense is a precinct, a fairly small in population. So from the scale of a House of Delegates district's a much different context, but...
From the town attorney.
Madam Chair, yes, Senator, all of our seats are at large. So that's one of the things. We have a population size of a little bit over 5,500. And though there is a state code provision that allows the drawing of the lots to determine the winner when there is a tie vote, our council decided that it would be preferable to have that question presented again to the electorate.
So my personal preference would be for ranked choice, but I don't want to cause Senator heartburn. All right, any other questions from the committee? All right, there's been a motion made and probably second to report SB 1300. Would the clerk please open the roll?
Ayes 15, noes 0.
Ayes 15, no 0. Bill reports. All right.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Next up is Senate Bill 1313.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So this is a bill you might be familiar with. This comes from a recommendation from JLARC, the 2021 JLARC study on affordable housing needs across the entire Commonwealth were consistent. every area of the Commonwealth has needs. And we've heard this morning a series of bills that are trying to address and tackle affordable housing. This sets out existing code section that is only permissible currently to the counties of Albemarle, Loudoun, cities of Alexandria, Charlottesville, and Fairfax, but opens up into the entire Commonwealth and adds some specific provisions around it. I think more importantly, you might be familiar with this bill when it was heard and passed this body last year, that also we established under lines 44 through 51, local work groups prior to the adoption of any such. I think it's important that each locality have the community discussion around affordable housing, whether it's mixed-use properties or others. It should be driven by local input from local citizens and the local board. So this is permissive that they may adopt the ordinance. I think we've struggled in this committee with what is the right weight, right? Do you force it into industrial? Do you force certain mandates on locality? This doesn't. This provides them the toolbox that they've been looking for to address the different needs. As this committee is very well aware, value and leverage is driven by density, it's driven by other things. That's all based on how the community input and where the right fit is. Is it transient oriented? What are the other aspects that the community wants and needs? And so it's my hope that this committee once again passes this bill as we struggle to figure out, and again, this is a recommendation from JLARC, and I hope it is the will of this committee to pass this.
All right, any questions for the patron? All right, with that, not seeing any, we'll take all those who are in favor. I'd like to speak.
Joe Lurch with the Virginia Association of Counties, and I think it was well stated by the patron for the reasons that this is a tool in the toolbox. I'll note where this has been employed by those localities that have this authority, they've had some successful developments to increase density and affordable units in those certain developments. So thank you.
Bob Weir, Gainesville District Supervisor, Prince William County. The county board passed a resolution in support of the bill last Tuesday. The provisions of the bill would afford the county flexibility that it currently does not have, and the permissive nature of this bill versus the prescriptive nature of its other options would be greatly appreciated by the county. Thank you.
Good morning again, Michelle Gowdy from the Virginia Municipal League. We support the bill. Thank you. Laura Bateman, Virginia First Cities. Our members also like the flexibility of this bill and are very supportive. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Eldon James, Virginia Chapter of the American Planning Association. We strongly support the bill, and especially the community engagement planning process for the community to develop its plan for affordable housing.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Isabel McLean with the Virginia Housing Alliance, and we support the bill and thank the patron for his continued efforts to working on this issue. We strongly believe that all localities should have the ability to tailor these programs to their specific needs to remove barriers to affordable housing. Thank you.
Good morning, Sheila Hurley-Hennessy with the Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy. We also support the bill. It's another tool in the toolbox moving us toward housing. Thank you.
Good morning, Stuart Schwartz, Coalition for Smarter Growth. We've worked on many of the inclusionary zoning tools in Northern Virginia. It's been very successful. I've also worked in the Richmond area and have seen the absence of such tools, and it'd be terrific for the Richmond area jurisdictions to have the same powers as well as other parts of the state. Thank you.
Trip Pollard, Southern Environmental Law Center. For reasons others have stated, we support the bill. We think it's a great additional tool, and like the public community input participation process, as well as some of the permissive steps to localities that are spelled out in the bill. Thank you.
All right, and online testimony in favor?
Tanya Washington, please turn on your camera, unmute, and begin your testimony.
Good morning. My name is Tanya Washington, Director of Planning for Prince William County. For the reasons stated by Supervisor Bob Weir, we are in support of this bill and would appreciate the ability to have the flexibility to craft an affordable dwelling unit ordinance that will meet the county's needs. Thank you.
All those opposed? And is there any opposition online? No. All right. Motion's been made and properly seconded to.
I did get a note from the administration. I don't know if they want to come up and oppose localities having flexibility. I believe it's on this bill. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen of the committee, yes, since you've asked, the administration does oppose this bill. The main reason is that these sorts of ordinances enforce a form of price control in terms of making affordability a requirement in developments without necessarily having the incentives to help the developers absorb those costs.
Question for the administration in that case.
Sure.
I mean, the people who spoke in favor, we've heard across the aisle from Republican and Democrat folks today. And at the same time, if this is being argued to be a local issue at the end of the day, what is the state policy or what's the state interest that would subvert that?
Frankly, it is with respect to the increase of the supply of housing. And the suppliers of the housing are the ones that are required to build the houses. And when you have affordability requirements, that's impacting the ability of the builders to build them at prices that they can afford to build.
So is it the administration's policy then that basically when it comes to actually having a concrete solution for dealing with affordable housing that we're just going to punt on this?
No, it's for the reasons that I've just stated.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, closing remarks from the senator.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think this is an issue this committee has struggled with greatly in terms of whether or not to force localities, whether to have a statewide board to intrude upon it. This is a bill that provides the most flexibility. We all recognize, JLARC has recognized, we've studied this for years. Despite the administration's, I think, misplaced opposition to this, because we have to drive it forward. And this bill provides the motivation in terms of how do you leverage density? How do you lie in partnership with those who wanted to develop housing? And so it's time we move this forward on a bipartisan basis. And I appreciate the bipartisanship from my local board coming out as well in support, which is important. From my locality, we've had bipartisan support across so many localities as well. This is not really a partisan issue. It's how do we solve our key community issue problems together.
All right, there's been a motion made and properly seconded to report SB 1313. So the clerk will please open the roll.
Ayes 8, noes 6, 1 abstention.
Ayes 8, nays 6, 1 abstention. Bill reports.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Next up is Senate Bill 1305. And I do have a substitute, and I'll explain the bill, and as I do so, I'll also explain the substitute and move the substitute be adopted.
All right, is there a motion? All right, second. The motion's been made and properly seconded to adopt a substitute for SB 1305. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, substitute is properly before us. I'll refer to the clerk, or to the council if the council would like to speak to that. All right, I've just been informed it is now finally online. Great. Okay, Senator, please explain what the original bill did, what this version does, and the differences between the two.
Yep. Thank you, Madam Chair. So the overall bill deals with a question coming out of a circuit court, which I think rightly found when you have a rezoning that occurs, and that rezoning is then challenged or is in appeal, what should happen with the taxation and what should that rezoned property be taxed at? And the circuit court found that our current General Assembly law is silent to what should occur in these conditions. Now, most localities, Fairfax, Orange, and many, many others, they don't tax a property when it's appealed. They keep it and hold the same value of the current zoning until all the appeal process has been exhausted. And so there's been practice over practice in Northern Virginia and many others. This came from a court case in Prince William County, and I think the judge rightly found the code is silent. And it's only up to the General Assembly to really act or define. And I think the question before the General Assembly is, one, either you affirmatively say immediately upon enactment of an ordinance for rezoning, the taxation occurs without regard of appeal or beneficial use, or what's proposed in this bill. And what I propose, Madam Chair, is that a few test cases occur, one of which is the initial 30-day appeal process be exhausted, or if it's been litigated in court, that be exhausted as well. And the reason why is we allow for different taxation and zoning based on a very important premise, which is zoning allows different uses, and those uses drive valuation. But in the case where you have something that's sort of being penned up in limbo, you really don't have that beneficial use until it is resolved. And so the amendment in this nature of a substitute before you also includes one change. We deleted the first section and really limited this bill to the rollback tax section. Furthermore, I added one additional provision, which was or sale. And so it adds a new fourth provision, or sale, because if you have someone who wants to buy that land, even if it's under dispute, I'm fine with them being taxed at, because they understand what they're getting into and the risk involved with it. And so those are really the principles of the bill, is helping to determine for localities affirmatively how a process should take place. We shouldn't have land that is driven, frankly, in abeyance pending these decisions, but being taxed at a much, much higher rate. And then in the cases of Prince William County, I know there's controversy around it because it involved a data center. Well, whether it involved a data center or not, it still has the pending question before us of how to define and provide localities guidance. And I know in those cases, the valuations were driven up incredibly. They went from like 4,000 to over 120,000 in some cases. And so as you can imagine, there are some folks who are retired, they have limited income, they would have to pull from retirement savings and many others to deal with that issue. And what you'll hear today is that it's a private contract, it's pending litigation, it is not, it's actually one that has already been resolved and the court has asked and answered this question. They're still ongoing in terms of the overall appeal itself. So that's why this issue is before the committee, and appreciate the committee's support. I know there'll be those in support and those in opposition as well, so I would like to get to that as well, Madam Chair.
Senator from Roanoke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to ask Senator McPike one question.
Proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to ask Senator McPike to speak to the enactment clause that was added in the substitute.
Yes. So the enactment is similar language to what was in the original, which had a January 1 of 2023. It does have to deal with the actual provisions of those who are getting taxed hundreds of thousands of dollars for the property that they can't use.
All right. Any other questions?
One follow-up then.
Yes, Senator.
Madam Chair, I'd like to ask the Senator, just why is it December 1 then?
Madam Chair, the center question around the specific zoning happened after the December 1, 2023 date. So without that, there's essentially no relief for the people who are paying exorbitant bills with no beneficial use of their land.
Okay, any other questions from the committee? Senator from Norfolk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Pike, so just so I'm clear, I own a piece of property. I decide to sell that property gets rezoned, and I'm selling it, and I get no benefit off of the future use, but I am taxed at a higher rate because the property was rezoned by the locality.
Madam Chair, I'd answer the Senator yes. If there's a rezoning and you're trying to sell, for instance, they would tax you at a higher rate if it's a higher, more intensive use under that zoning. I think the question that this answers, if someone has challenged that rezoning in court, you wouldn't really be able to use that, or you take a tremendous financial risk at pursuing it without a clear court determination.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other questions from the committee? Senator from Colonial Heights.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this may be a question for council or the patron. In the subsection B, it says the assessment or reassessment required pursuant to subsection A shall only be effective following, and then Romanet 1. So this is talking about if you have a farm that gets rezoned to be sold for an industrial use, right? That's the reassessment we're talking about. It says, shall only be effective following the approval of a modification in the zoning classification of the subject real estate. So wouldn't changing it from agriculture to industrial under that Romanet 1, would that not allow the increased taxation at that point? Because as I understand the chairman's bill, you should not be able to tax it at the higher rate until the appeals process has been exhausted so that people have the ability to challenge it. And so do we need to perhaps add language of, whichever occurs later of those various options?
Senator Pike.
I believe the question was council, but as laid out under the bill, there's almost a natural sequence and natural order into it. So the natural order is still the actual rezoning itself, the initial 30-day period, or the exhaustion of any court action. But I'll rely on council if there's any other tweak. I think it's sort of a natural progression of things, but.
Yeah, I'm not sure what I can add to that. You can't require all of those things because they're not all going to occur in the instance.
Any other questions from the committee? Or does the senator have another question, follow-up?
Happy to address those after support and opposition as well, as senators get a chance to take a time with it.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I think just the sort of question is, if each one of those Romanettes is an or, could you not have a locality say, well, we comply with Romanet 1, we reassess them from agriculture to industrial, so we're going to assess them at the higher rate now because we comply with Romanet 1. If it's...
Senator Pike.
Madam Chair, I'd rely on council in terms of whether or not an and or a comma is needed is what the senator is getting at in terms of providing the precise definition or intent.
I think I understand the gist of the senator's question. I'm not quite sure how to address that on the fly, though, to clarify what he's asking.
Madam Chair, happy to work with the senator on.
We'll come back to that. All right, let's. Are
clarifying
there any other questions from the committee? All right, if not, then what we're going to do is we're going to put 5 minutes on the clock for each side. All those who are in favor of the bill, please take the microphone here. Five minutes on the clock. Begin. Thank you.
Paige Snyder, Prince William County. I received a tax assessment from Prince William County that assessed my farm at $600,000 when the year before that I received that first assessment, my taxes were only $8,000. Is this case that we've been referencing today, the people who have had their property rezoned but have no beneficial use from them, but are having to pay data center tax rates when we can't build the data center? Thank you, Senator McPike, for introducing this bill, and I support it. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Mary Ann Gadban. I'm a resident of Prince William County. I'm one of 400 residents who are being financially devastated due to the ambiguity in 15.2-2204. The law permits appeals of rezonings, but fails to set the effective date of a rezoning vote that is challenged in court. And this is allowing counties to impose speculative assessments on our residential and agricultural properties. The omission has led to some severe consequences for us as property owners. In Prince William County, they have taken an aggressive approach. They are assessing our properties as speculative data center values while 2 zoning appeals are going through the court systems. We're approaching year number 2. None of us can afford the increase of taxes to $300,000 a year for my property, $600,000 a year from my neighbor, and other people are in the $150,000 and $350,000 a year. It seems like we're being punished because just an hour away in Orange County, a zoning appeal for a 2,600-acre Wilderness zoning case has been appealed, but that county's taken a common sense approach. They have not increased the assessments, and they've actually added a notation in the record saying "in appeal period." This, okay, sorry. Thank you. Please support this vote.
My name is Ruth Underwood Williamson. I am an Appomattox County resident, and I own property in Prince William County. I'm asking you to support Senate Bill 1305 and support other citizens of Virginia from punitive taxation that on property that we cannot use as it is currently zoned. Our taxes went from $30,000 a year to over $250,000 a year, and I am a retired educator. How can I pay that?
Madam Chairwoman, I'm here to speak in favor of SB 1305. I want every one of the individuals on the panel, senators, these could be your constituents. The counties are treating these folks trying to sell their land differently, and the county has set aside $500,000 to fight a lawsuit against the sellers of this suit. We have to protect the people of our county. We have to protect the people of Virginia. Please pass this bill.
Hi, my name is Melanie Williams. I'm a Prince William County resident also. My family, we are a regular average family that we are facing tremendous financial hardship if we are forced to pay these current tax assessments as we're trying to sell our property. The reality is that the residents and their families should be treated fairly and equitably across the state, no matter what county they're in. This should not be ambiguous. It should be applied fairly. And we should not be paying taxes for a zoning that has not been finalized. I do agree that if it becomes finalized through the court system, we should absolutely owe back to the date of the original zoning. But currently, we should be taxed at our current tax rate, what we're currently using our dwellings for, which is residential, until that litigation is finalized. Otherwise, my family and myself face dire financial hardship. Thank you.
Tom Ackerley, Prince William County. Like to thank Senator Pike for bringing this bill to attention. I would like the committee to support it.
Good morning, Madam Chair. I'll be quick. Sarah Thomas on behalf of Virginia Association for Commercial Real Estate. We absolutely support this bill. Just by way of quick background, back in 2021, the General Assembly expanded the Court of Appeals to include an automatic right of appeal for land use decisions. And because of that, we've seen specifically land use decisions tied to major economic development projects get caught up and delayed in the court. And so to protect those landowners, we absolutely support this. Thank you.
Elizabeth Rafferty here on behalf of the home builders, and we support the bill as well.
All right, we'll take online in favor. For those speaking online, please keep your we're going to put a timer for 1 minute for per speaker.
Sarah Ramey, please turn on your camera, unmute your microphone, and begin your testimony.
Good morning. My camera seems to be not working. My name is Sarah Ramey. I reside in Spotsylvania County and own property in Prince William County.
I'm sorry to interrupt. We have a committee policy that all cameras must be turned on, so we will come back to you if you can get your camera working. We'll go to the next person.
Sally Chandler, please turn on your camera, unmute your microphone, and begin your testimony.
I'm Sally Chandler, an owner of property on Pageland facing an enormous increase in property taxes. The zoning on which this assessment is based is not final due to pending litigation. Until that litigation is resolved, the property cannot be used for the zoning designation. Taxing me as if it were otherwise is unfair and financially ruinous.
It looks like it's working.
It isn't working? Okay, thank you.
All right, next person, please.
Lori Snyder, please turn on your camera, unmute, and begin your testimony.
And we will try again for the original speaker if that person's not on, if their camera is on.
Can you see me?
No, we cannot. All right. What we're going to do is we're going to go into opposition testimony. If the camera works at the very end, then we will come back to that speaker for 1 additional minute. Those who are opposed to the bill, if you could stand up and line up to the microphone, you'll have 5 minutes on each side.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Once again, Bob Weir, Gainesville District Supervisor, Prince William County. While I don't mean to sound unsympathetic, I think there are several things that the members of the committee need to know. And that, first and foremost, litigation has already been factored in by the County Assessment Office, resulting in 50% off the top of the assessment and an actual reduction, total reduction of 78% from $1.5 million per base acre all the way down to $329. The adjustments were largely driven by the same people who just loudly supported this bill. They were also the ones who loudly touted the tax revenues of the parcels involved during the rezoning hearing. They're not seeking fairness, they're seeking an additional reduction of the 78% reduction they've already gotten. I would note that the sellers of the property also agreed to responsibility for all the rollback taxes at section 9.1.11 and all other real estate taxes at section 14.1.1 of the Digital Gateway sales contract they all willfully signed. In essence, the patron and the Digital Gateway property owners are asking the legislature to intercede not only in active litigation, but to relieve them of the contractual obligations they've already entered. Circuit Court seems to agree. Although the patron is quoted as not knowing how much this bill will cost Prince William County or other counties across Virginia, according to Prince William County's CFO, if enacted, the bill would have an immediate impact of at least $6 million in the form of rebates to the Digital Gateway property owners alone, an additional $500,000 expenditure on outside legal counsel. That impact does not include lost future revenues. Similar zoning cases we've got in the county, Devlin Road data center case, for example, the potential impact on numerous other data center assessment cases, 5 of which have been brought against the county by 2 of the wealthiest corporations in the world, or the similar impacts on all jurisdictions in the Commonwealth involving everything from data centers to solar farms to distribution centers, a view that's apparently shared by the Staunton City Attorney and Deputy City Manager on LinkedIn. Similarly, the patron asserts that the county is taxing something that someone can't actually use. Apparently, the center is unaware of multiple data center site plans, grading permits, etc., filed by the purchasers or the potential purchaser as recently as last Wednesday and currently under review by the county. So there is use being made of the rezoning. I'm assuming that the language of 58.13958C has been stricken because I can't see it on my version now. But I would suggest that it remains in. It establishes a potential conflict with 58.1.1831, which precludes injunctions against the assessment or collection of local taxes or state taxes. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Bill Wright. I live in Gainesville, Virginia, adjacent to the proposed Prince William Digital Gateway. I agree with Supervisor Ware's remarks. Prince William County is a hotbed of data center influence, and you're seeing some more of it today. Make no mistake, SB 1305 is not an appeal to fairness. It is an appeal to favoritism. If you really seek fairness, please put an end to these pleas for special treatment and reject SB 1305. Thank you.
My name is Elena Schlossberg. I'm with the Coalition to Protect Prince William County. I'd like to first say to the Honorable Senator McPike, I think your heart is in the right place, but this is a mistake. He does not know and has admitted to the impact statewide. He's unaware of the revenue cost to everybody in the state. But more importantly, it's not the role of the General Assembly to remedy what should be a contract dispute. We know for a fact there's another contract that's been signed that accounts for what happens if there's a lawsuit. They signed it. This bill is bad for local revenue and not ready for prime time. Please vote no. Thank you.
Madam Chair. I'm Kevin Coyle. I'm a resident of Gainesville, and I feel like this is a local matter that ought to be kept in the county hands.
Rachel Ellis. I live in Haymarket, Virginia. I concur with Supervisor Weir's comments, and I ask you to oppose this. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Jessica Grove, and I am a Gainesville resident. And the landowners behind us, they fought really hard to get these contracts signed, and they knew what they were signing. Please vote no.
My name is Marilyn Karp. I live in Haymarket, Virginia, 3 miles from where they are going to build 37 data centers and 12 substations. And the property that they are doing this is surrounded by 2-lane highways. They are going to destroy our county. I oppose this bill. Thank you.
We'll go to online testimony. Is there anyone online? All right, we've been told the person who was opposed seems to have disappeared, and is the original person who spoke in favor, is her camera on?
Sarah Ramey, if you can get your camera on.
If your camera comes on, you'll have 1 minute.
And there's one
If not.
person who seems to be in favor.
Okay. All right, Senator McPike.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And to wrap up, and I know we'll have a quick amendment, I think, to work on, but to wrap up, a couple different points I think are important. The fiscal impact statewide is negligible because most counties actually don't tax during this period. That's already the practice. And so for the ones who are taxing with something on appeal, it'd be a fiscal impact of their choosing. Otherwise, the money wouldn't exist. So in a sense, it's a false fiscal promise that one county has decided to do it, while Fairfax, Orange, others I've checked around don't actually tax during this period. So it is only upon the General Assembly to rectify and provide direction to localities. In fact, it can't be resolved by localities, and the Circuit Court found that in this case. The Circuit Court found they don't have the authority either. So it is only upon the General Assembly to provide clarity and definition, and appreciate the committee's support for this effort.
Okay, discussion for patron. Oh, hold on.
We have one amendment, I think.
And I have comments. All right, first. There's a minute. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I think, having listened to the testimony and understanding and feeling for the folks who have a lot of concerns over the growth of the data centers, I certainly share those concerns, and I know the patron does too, and many of us up here do. I think there's also a kind of a question of the fundamental fairness of local government ability to tax when something is still going through an appeals process. I believe the council had a line amendment to address the issue I had raised before the testimony.
Council.
Madam Chair, it's two identical amendments in two different places. This is to the substitute bill, line 18. After the word effective, insert upon the later of the, and then the same amendment on line 115, after the word effective, insert upon the later of the.
Madam Chair, I consider those amendments to be friendly and move the adoption.
Second.
All right, so the motion's been made and probably a second to adopt the amendments. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, the amendments are before us. All right, so Senator, I've got a few things I want to have a dialogue with you about. The first is the precedent that this sets. The precedent here, we have, first, does the Senator acknowledge that we have a number of assessment issues that are ongoing in Western Prince William, specifically in my district, as this property is in its entirety, or this area is in its entirety? Would the Senator agree that we have a number of outstanding challenges to assessments from other basically other buyers right now?
To clarify the Senator's question are there in Prince William County or statewide
in Prince William County
ongoing? There likely are, and they would continue throughout every year of our General Assembly sessions, almost in any locality.
Would this, then my next question would be, would this then establish a precedent that if we intercede on this, then every time that we have a site assessment or that we have a property tax assessment challenge coming from, whether it's commercial one day, whether it's residential another day, that the General Assembly is going to be expected to intercede on that person's behalf or that corporation's behalf?
I'd answer you, Madam Chair, that a couple different provisions. And remember, your only appeal right now currently afforded to you is to go to your local real estate appeal board. That's the only vehicle that you have available. The circuit court is not really until we actually provide some definition around this. And so it's not a remedy about each and every one. The point of this is to provide a statewide fix to what and when and provide clear definition. That way you have your local ability to go and appeal or likewise follow the provisions. And if the locality doesn't provide these provisions, then certainly they can be taken to circuit court under general law and seek remedy there.
And Senator, was there, as part of the contract, an agreement about who would be paying the rollback taxes on this?
I'd answer, Madam Chair, that the provisions of a private contractor are irrelevant to this. It's still an answer and a question that needs to be resolved by the General Assembly in terms of when a tax should be paid if there's no beneficial use. So I think it's a moot point to this, whether or not someone's private contract has it or does not have it.
And Senator, did the county already assume, as part of the deal that they're making here, or basically kind of going into this, the factor of litigation in terms of, a discounted assessment rate on these properties?
The question is on whether or not the county discounted some of the rates. That's my understanding they do, that the testimony from you heard earlier is correct in terms of some discounted rates. And even with the discounted rates, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars that folks who are retired and have on fixed income. Again, there's no sale, there's no beneficial use. There's still, even with the discount, at a huge financial disadvantage.
So, Senator, the last question I'll pose to you then on that is, if the county has already assumed that they're counting for litigation as a part of this, and that they have already offered what the supervisor said was 78% discount at that point, and that's something that neither you nor I or anyone else has disputed at this point. Am I correct in that?
Madam Chair, I do not have a dispute. I don't have the exact percentages of discount other than the large figures. If it's discounted, then the tax bill would have been, a multitude of tens of millions of dollars harsher on these residents.
The issue that I'm still dealing with here is that even when we have an assessment here that's being given that is at a lower rate than what it would normally be applied in that area, that we are setting ourselves up to bring the General Assembly into what is essentially at this point a tax dispute, which is common, as we are seeing right now, where we've got two data center operators in Western Prince William who are actively challenging their property tax assessments right now, even though the entire impetus is the reason that we're supposed to look on these things favorably in the first place is we get told all the time to think of the revenue. We get told all the time, think of the tax revenue on this. And we know from those cases right now that the challenge is coming not because they're asking to pay more revenue to the county. We know that those are coming because they want a lower rate. And they will argue that that is a matter of fairness. And these are multi-billion, multi-trillion dollar corporations that will argue that this is a matter of fairness for them. Does this not establish a similar precedent, even if these are residential homeowners who are selling these properties, as opposed to mega corporations like they are?
I'd answer the chairwoman. Actually, the provision of or sale actually would indicate that the transfers occurred to the trillion-dollar corporation, and they would have to start to pay the tax. But the point of this is to protect the small farmer who wants to provide his farm, that they're often maybe have wealth and land, but not in terms of cash, but are cash poor. It's provide them the relief of benefit. That's why also the provision of sale is included in here. So that transfer happens, that trillion-dollar company, they want to take on that risk, they also should pay the tax.
All right, any other discussion from the committee?
Yeah, renew my motion to report. Second.
All right, there's been a motion made and properly second to report the amended substitute version, or the substitute as amended. So it should be report with substitute as amended for SB 1305. Discussion on the motion. Junior Senator from Loud.
Madam Chair, I have a quick question for the patron. Senator, thank you, Madam Chair. Senator McPike, did you say that not all jurisdictions tax the property during appeal?
Madam Chair, I'd answer the senator that is correct. I'm searching for ones who do tax, and it's more those who don't tax than those who do, and that's why this is here to help to clarify.
Thank you, thank you.
My own question for the senator is basically, in the interim, from the time that this bill were to take effect, and keep in mind that it is retroactive because it goes back to December 1st, 2023, at what point does this only pause the collection of taxation during the litigation period, or does this at any point go beyond, or basically telling Prince William you can't, charge a blank amount of assessment?
I thank the chairwoman for the question. It is only limited for the period of what is under appeal. They can go back and assess change that has no impact on the taxing authority itself. It's just an abeyance and hold when something is in appeal.
All right, the motion's been made, properly second to report SB 1305 with substitute as amended. Clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 13, noes 2.
Ayes 13, noes 2.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thanks to the patron. And with that, there's no other business before the committee, so the committee will rise. Thank you.